It's down racing. They both go deep into the corner. It's the second weekend of the season in the 2025 GEDLICH Racing Winter Series, and we are at the fabulous Autódromo Internacional do Algarve here in Portimão. The concluding moments of the GT Winter Series qualifying just occurring in the back of shot at the moment. Myself, Adam Weller, and Andy McEwen on the call for you this weekend, with Izzy Browning down in the pits and on the track walks. 4.6 kilometers in length this circuit, 15 turns, and it is another right-hand predominant track as well. So look for those left side tyres to maybe cry enough towards the end of these races. Plenty of elevation change, and over the course of its now 17-year history almost, this circuit has been a revered part of the conversation in regard to the best racing circuits in Europe. It's a jewel of the Algarve, and it's a jewel of the GEDLICH Racing Winter Series calendar. We've had some mixed conditions. You can see the tarmac is at the point of drying. It's almost dry out there on the circuit now. The cars are currently circulating on slicks, and the conditions should stay in our favour all day long today. So then, as I alluded to, qualifying is actually still going on just in the final minute of the session at the moment. So the drivers hustling the cars, we can see at the moment on screen, to try and set an improvement in the latter stages of the session. We've already had some drama this weekend. A couple of cars have had to withdraw owing to incidents out on the circuit in the practice sessions on Thursday and Friday. In the first of these GT Win Series qualifying sessions just a few moments ago, we had Dexter Muller have an issue which caused a red flag. His car went frontwards into the barrier. Dexter is A-OK. The status update for the car barn by Raceworks Mercedes AMG GT3 Evo is to be determined. Our first racing action will come in the next few moments. That will be the GT4 Winter Series. But what a treat these GT cars make on the circuit. There is the number 99 car on the track as well at the moment. One of the AF Corsa Ferrari 296s, of which there are scheduled to be 6 on the grid this weekend. This for newcomer Alberto Duran, one of our new faces in the paddock for this weekend. A deluxe entry expected of at least 24 taking the start in the GT Winter Series for this weekend. We've got new entries as well in the GT4s and the prototypes, and a very exciting day ahead for us. Of course, we've got 3 races to bring you today: the GT4s, the prototypes, and the GT Winter Series. You see a new car there to the GT Winter Series just ahead of the 99 of Alberto Duran. That is the number 22, the McLaren Artura Trophy, the first appearance of a Cup 3 car. That car, of course, from McLaren's Trophy series that runs alongside the SRO package. It's an Evo spec, it's the brand new car, and the 570S Trophy champions from last year, Ollie Webb and Ryan James, sharing that car. It's looking like a fairly competitive force as well. And we look forward to seeing what that car can do in the racing action. The checkered flag is falling on this qualifying session. The fastest car in the session is a GT3 car, and that was not always a guarantee last time out at Estoril. Keanu Alazari, the youngster who you'll recognize from last year's Formula Winter Series, looks to have netted pole position for the second race of the day. The second race of the weekend, which will be on Sunday morning. Simon Birch, Paolo Roberti, and Cup 4 racer Lamborghini Super Trofeo of Jerzy Spinkovic currently in 4th position ahead of the KTM Crossbow GT2 of Simon Willer, the 889 MZR KTM. So that qualifying session is just coming to a close at the moment. We're a little bit behind timetable at the moment. We weren't anticipating to show you the last moments of this qualifying session. However, our first racing action is going to come to you as scheduled. The car's going to grid at 1/4 for the GT4 Winter Series. I am joined in the commentary box by Andy McEwen, as we mentioned at the top of the broadcast. We've had a mixed run of fortunes in regards to the weather, Andy, but it's always spectacular to be here at Portimao.
Oh, yeah, speaking of spectacular, I think someone's had a rather spectacular end to their qualifying session. That is Oscar Rinzovic, I'm afraid, in the Myrtle Motorsport Ferrari, deep in the gravel trap. It is a good day to go to the beach today, though, Adam. It has turned into that anyway. It didn't feel that way when we woke up this morning, did it? It was grey, a little bit chilly. We couldn't really see a lot of the track from the race resort at which we're staying, literally just outside the outer boundary of the circuit. But now a glorious sunny afternoon, temperature in the high teens, I would say. A perfect day for racing. The track is largely dry. I suspect, though, still 1 or 2 slightly damp patches, maybe the curbs retaining a little bit of water. That's possibly been catching some people out. I did notice we had a full course yellow about halfway through that qualifying session. Now Rinzovic in the gravel too. So, yeah, challenging conditions out there. A little bit of a gamble on setup maybe, but slick tyres the way to go. They just have to be mindful, I think, in the early stages of this first race, of any lingering damp patches around the Portimao circuit, which is enough of a challenge, Adam, really, in the dry.
It is. It's not an easy circuit at the best of times. We saw drivers getting caught out by some of the elevation changes, the drops in the surface last year here in the GT Winter Series. Oscar Rinzovic, of course, if you're just joining us for the first time this season, he was, oh dear, as we get to see some live action of the blooper variety. Don't run over your own tow hook now. In last weekend's event, we alluded to it several times. Oscar Rinzovic is a newcomer to racing. His first 3 races of his career took place just 7 days ago at the Circuito Estoril, and of course he's learning a new car again this week, because he was in a 488 Challenge Evo last week. He's now in a 296 Challenge for Myrtle Motorsport, and I mean, either of those cars is quite the thing to tame in the early stages of your racing career, but also to have to learn a different car, a different chassis, indeed a different engine configuration between those 2 cars between your first 2 meetings. That's a bit of an ask. And
the first 2 meetings, which are only a week apart from one another as well, so no time really to do a huge amount of maybe sim testing and, you know, to try and recalibrate your brain slightly. That, of course, is what a lot of drivers do these days. Before an event, they will be putting in the hours on the simulator, either at home or at the team factory, just to just try and get their head in the game. You don't learn everything from a simulator, but you can at least get your basic reference points right, and he won't have had a lot of time to do that, really. A very quick turnaround between these first 3 rounds, really, of the GT Winter Series. Of course, we have the 6 hours of Portimao here. In a week's time, we'll be back in the Algarve, and yeah, very quick turnaround. Not a lot of time to prepare yourselves for each event, but this is where the cream rises to the top, I suppose, Adam. Those who are good at adapting to these sort of things should be the ones coming out on top.
Yeah, absolutely right. So we are getting ready for the GT4 Winter Series. You can see the cars getting ready on the pit apron at the moment. You alluded to the 6-hour Portimao, where we will see all of the cars you'd expect to be eligible for the GT Winter Series, and indeed GT4 Winter Series, and some other endurance racing oddities out on the circuit. Expecting a very compelling 6-hour race in just over a week's time. A total of 20 races being held by the GEDLICH Racing organisation in Portugal, with Estoril last week, this weekend's action at Portimao, and the following weekend here at the same venue, of course, with the 6-hour and the introduction of the 2025 Formula Winter Series. These drivers have had some 16 hours of running across Thursday and Friday, of course separated into the different championships, but nonetheless they have had a lot of track time before getting out onto the circuit. And nonetheless, this Portimao facility, because of its unique challenges, but also I wager a little bit because there's more of a cushion here than Estoril. There's that temptation to try and use a bit more of that runoff, a bit more of that leeway, and you end up finding the limit and surpassing the limit more often than you would last week.
As perhaps is what happened to Oscar Rinzovic, whose car you can see recovering back to the pit lane, thankfully under its own steam. But yeah, we had a conversation about this morning, didn't we? There seemed to have been far more red flags and full course cautions and cars being damaged this weekend than there were last weekend at Estoril, which is much more of an old school circuit. You think of old school as being more punishing, but not necessarily the case. And you know, sometimes drivers just have it a little bit too good, don't they? And they forget sometimes that there is still a possibility to get things wrong and damage your car. But it is a challenging circuit as well. Not that Estoril isn't, but this circuit, you would have to say, is up a couple of notches on the difficulty level, isn't it, really? Just because of the undulation. That really, it makes it look spectacular, makes it feel very spectacular to drive, I'm sure, but it also means the car is naturally more on the edge. Racing cars don't generally like going over a blind crest at a high speed, hitting a curb, catching a damp patch, changing direction. They're not really designed for that, and it is easy to overstep the mark ever so slightly. Also, a deceptively high-speed circuit. Again, we often think of Portimão as being very technical, all of those tight 90-degree corners around the top of the hill, but actually, when you come down the hill, often the speed starts to build, and you are often going a lot quicker than maybe you realise. So, yeah, tricky circuit. This is just when they're out there on their own testing and qualifying. We're about to send, 18 GT4 cars off into the first corner at the beginning of our first race of the weekend, and that's when things can get all the more hairy.
And I think I may have even said it on the broadcast a week ago, that come Portimão, we wouldn't see the same sensation, the same oddity that we had a week ago at Estoril, where you'd have the Cup cars streaking past the front row of the grid, the GT3s going into the first corner because the straight isn't as long. But actually, the main straight here at Portimão is only a matter of meters shorter than the near kilometre-long straight that we have at the Circuito Estoril. It is some 0.602 miles in length, which is 0.969 of a kilometre. So again, it's a very long main straight and a slightly quicker approach to the straight as well under racing conditions. So once again, I think in the GT races later on, we are going to see that same dynamic of potentially some of the Cup cars causing disturbances at the front of the field. But the GT4s are the cars we expect on the grid in the next minute or so, as one of the safety car drivers just wants to make sure there's enough rubber down for the GT4 race. Last time out here in the GT4 Winter Series, your first race of the weekend was won by an SR Motorsport Mercedes AMG GT4. That car, the number 11 SR Motorsport by Schnitzelau Machine, starts third overall on the grid this time around, and it is going to be Enrico Ferreira at the wheel for the first race of the weekend. So he'll be looking to emulate his SR Motorsport colleague Joel Mesh in what Mesh did last year here in the GT4 Winter Series. The green flag flies at the end of the pit lane, so they are just now going to roll towards the grid. And of course, once cars are on the grid, we will start to see Izzy Browning's first grid walk of the day. As the cars are now getting ready, you can see some of the new additions to the grid making their way out onto the circuit. Chief among them, the pink machine, the BWT Muka Motorsport entry. That is an all-pro car, or that's a pro lineup at the wheel of the number 18. It's going to be Axel Bengtsson at the wheel of the car for this first race of the weekend. And an interesting young lineup there, two talents who are looking to make a mark on BWT Muka Motorsport. I believe both set to be doing the GT4 Germany series in the summertime and getting their first taste of competitive GT4 action here in the GT4 Winter Series. All of our top contenders from a week ago at Estoril are back. Chief among them, of course, is Elite Motorsport, and Elite a week ago took a clean sweep of the races, 3 race wins in the GT4 Win Series a week ago for Elite Motorsport. And well, the story might well continue on in that fashion, because it is Mackenzie Cresswell on pole position for this GT4 Win Series race, Andy. Money down, my friend, hypothetical if you prefer. Anyone going to beat Elite this week?
Well, I don't think they're going to have it all their own way, actually. They were beaten in qualifying 2, remember, by the Rafa Racing McLaren, so that immediately shows that they're not quite the same distance up the road as everybody else. We're right on board, actually, with the Elite Motorsport car now, making its way out of the pit lane in the hands of Mackenzie Creswell. So Creswell got the job done in qualifying, but in the second session, as I said, it did not go the way of Josh Rattigan, which is a bit of a reversal from a week ago. W&S Motorsport, Adam, they look strong. Maximilian Schreier on the front row for this race. Tim Horrell, who was a real standout performer in Estoril a week ago, starting directly behind. And when you look at the lap times on a 2-minute plus lap, for there to only be 0.3 of a second between Creswell and Schreier, the 2 front row starters, that's certainly close enough to give us a good race. So I don't think they'll have it all their own way. The smart money's on Mackenzie for race 1, but I don't think we're going to get a double from Elite this weekend. That's as bold as I'm willing to go on the predictions.
Interesting. I mean, of course, last time we spoke of the huge gaps that the teams had at the end of each race, or that the team, Elite Motorsport, had at the end of each race. However, if you remember, before Enrico Federer's car started to suffer a technical glitch in race 1, he was only about 4 seconds down the road with 20 minutes of the race in the book. So certainly teams can match the pace of Elite. What we've not seen yet is a car other than the Elite McLaren take the flag first. The polar opposite of what we saw a season ago, 3 different manufacturers winning in the GT4 Win Series on the series' first ever weekend at Estoril in 2024. We saw an Aston Martin and a Mercedes win here 12 months ago, so we didn't see the McLaren or indeed the Porsche, none of the mid-engine cars getting to that top step of the podium yesterday. Of course, for those of you who are just joining us, or last year I should say, anyway, those of you just joining us, there are multiple classes on this grid. There is the Pro class for driver pairings exclusively of silver and above, Pro-Am class for driver lineups featuring 1 bronze driver, the AM for all bronze lineups. Then you've got Cayman Trophy, which is for the slightly sub-GT4 spec Porsche Cayman Club Sport spec machines. They're very popular on the Nürburgring Nordschleife. And then you've got the club category for slightly older vintage GT4s out of homologation GT4 machineries, such as the bright orange BWT Muka Motorsport Aston Martin of Thilo Goss that you can see in the foreground of the shot of the circuit that we're currently looking at here from the main grandstand at the Autódromo Internacional do Algarve. Now, this circuit is traditionally a bit of a trek no matter where you live, so we usually don't quite see the same spectator numbers as we do at Estoril or Valencia, but if you are local or somewhere near the circuit, do bear in mind that spectator admission is free. So if you want to come and join us on Sunday for a full day of racing with GTs and prototypes, you can do so free of charge here with the GEDLICH Racing Winter Series. We hope that we'll see some of you joining us, but for those of you watching on the stream, we thank you for doing so. The first racing action is mere moments away, and we can head down to the first grid of the day right now with Izzy.
We can indeed. Welcome down to the grid, everyone. First grid of the day and beautiful sunshine here at the Algarve International Circuit. We've got the GT4 first race of the weekend just coming up very shortly. As Adam and Andy have already alluded to, it is a bit of a case of can anyone beat Elite, as I said last weekend. So we will see if Mackenzie Creswell can take another race win for that team. But he might have a bit of competition because alongside him on the front row is the number 31 of Max Schreier. Now, first front row for him, I'm going to see if I can dive in with Max. They've got the door open, so I am going to dive in. Max, first front row start for you. I mean, things are going pretty well this weekend, aren't they?
Yes, we had an amazing pace in the wet. Now for the dry race, we will see what happens, but I'm looking forward to it.
How comfortable are you feeling on this track? It's definitely a tricky track to get to grips with, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like a roller coaster. There's so many ups and downs. I really enjoy driving here, and yeah, just a lot of fun.
And the guy alongside you has won all of the races so far, so are you going to make sure that it's you that's the winner this time?
Yeah, for sure. We will see what happens.
All right, best of luck. There we go. Roller coaster. That is the buzzword of the weekend, of course. Everybody describing this track as a roller coaster. They have got the door shut on the Elite McLaren, so I don't know if I can have a chat with them. We have got the 5-minute board. Am I able to have a chat? Am I able to have a chat? Just quickly, we've got the 3-minute board, so still got a little bit of time to have a chat with Mackenzie. Mackenzie, pole position once again. I mean, this is a track that I'm sure you know maybe a bit better than Estoril, but pole position once again. Can Elite take the win?
Yeah, there's no reason why not. This is the first time I've actually been here, so yeah, it's a big learning experience for me and the team. But yeah, I think we can definitely have a good result today. We have a strong package, as we've shown with pole position, so yeah, I'm looking for the win.
And the guy alongside you, I just spoke to him, he's obviously wanting to take a win away from you guys, so I think there'll be some hard battles. Where can you make the moves on this track?
It's quite a wide track, so you could say it's one of the easier ones, but it's my first time racing here, so it's going to be a voyage of discovery, I think, going into turn 1. I'm just hoping to stay in front on the first lap and go from there.
Okay, wish you best of luck. Have fun out there. All right, so I think it's going to be a little bit of a tighter battle today than we did see in Estoril. I'm sure that's what all of our spectators will certainly be hoping for. We're going to continue down the grid. We've got the number 11 SR Motorsport, Enrico Ferderer, in that car. They, of course, had an issue in race 1 last weekend, so they will be certainly hoping not to have the same again. And then our first of the Pro-Ams, the number 30 car, Tim Horrell, will be in that car today, and he will be, well, I'm sure hoping for much of the same as last weekend, because he had a great opening weekend of the season and really, really impressed. I think Adam Weller spoke to him and he said he kind of just felt comfortable in the car for the first time with the hand controls. Of course, Tim, a paraplegic driver on our grid, but nothing can stop him from the flying starts that we've seen him do so far. We are going to continue down though. We've got the number 8-12 Callum Davies on this row. The Rafa guys, they had struggled a little bit in the wet last weekend, Callum did, but of course the dry conditions hopefully should suit them better in this race, which we'll go to now.
It's the first race of the weekend. The GT4 Winter Series is about to roll here for the first of 3 races. This will be a 30-minute sprint, no pit stops, no driver changes. You'll only go down pit road if something has gone wrong. It's a flat-out sprint race, as both of our GT races will be on this Saturday. We've got 3 races to bring you. This is the first of them. And it is a rather familiar sight at the front of the order. The 77 Elite McLaren is on pole position, but those W&S Motorsport Porsches that were a bit of a disturbance in the running order in the Pro class, and indeed in their Pro-Am class as well, 1 entry in each category, they will be up there at the front. But it is the number 77 Elite car alongside the W&S Motorsport machine on that front row. Some interesting cars further back on the grid for this one as well. You see there the SVG Motorsport Pro-Am class Ginetta G56 towards the rear there, as well as the Hoofer Racing by Bonk Motorsport number 127. Now that car was meant to have a sister machine on the circuit, the 431 car, which was to be driven by Michael Bonk. Now Martin Kroll, who's in the car at the moment, was sharing with Michael Bonk 12 months ago. They were meant to race separately this weekend. However, the 431 car was sent into an early visit to its motorhome, unfortunately, That car is going no further, so Kroll and Bonk now share a single Hofer BMW. Here's Mackenzie Cresswell then, just heading down through turn 9 of the circuit as we speak, and he is our pole sitter alongside Maximilian Schreier on the front row of the grid for W&S Motorsport. Enrico Ferderer looking to match the form his own car displayed here a year ago with Joel Mesh at the wheel. He starts from P3 on the grid. He's alongside the Pro-Am driver Tim Horrell, who is the bronze driver of the lineup, lest we forget, but he has been up there with the pros in terms of pace at times at Estoril, and we've seen it again here so far at the Autódromo Internacional de Algarve. Callum Davis, 5th on the grid in the Rafa Racing by Racelab McLaren. He is joined by Baudouin Detu, the Frenchman in the Racing Spirit of Le Mans Go for Racing entry. That is an Aston Martin Vantage, a new generation Aston Martin Vantage GT4. Benjamin Sylvesterson, the 187 car. That's FK Performance back in the GT4 Win Series for the first time since Portimão last year, alongside Axel Bengtsson in the BWT Muka Motorsport machine, the Mercedes AMG GT4 in the distinctive BWT pink. It is a literal pink Mercedes. Joachim Bulting, the first of the AM drivers, 9th on the grid. He was meant to at one time be doing GT Win Series as well. However, he had an accident in his 992 Cup car, so we'll only be seeing him in the Cayman. He'll be fighting with Rami Ramier off the line in the Invitational class BMW M4 GT4 Evo, the car that will be homologated finally in March. Vili Kuna is next, the 110 car, lining up on pole position among the Cayman Trophy machines. Mikael Sander alongside him in the other SR Motorsport Cayman. Then there's a new addition to Cayman Trophy in the form of Franz Linden, the Speedworks automotive car. A welcome addition to that class. Just behind them, another Cayman, the full GT4 spec car of Peter Lurbeck. He is racing for Plus Line Racing Team. Another Porsche, Jose Garcia, the number 24 AM class entry. That is Lion Speed GP in their GT4 Win Series debut. Jose looking to get some more mileage in the car ahead of taking on the Portimão 6 Hours with GEDLICH Racing in a week's time. He is joined by Thilo Goss in the number 700 BWT Muka Motorsport old school first generation Aston Martin GT4. Martin Krul is next on the grid in P17 in the aforementioned Hofer by Bonk Motorsport BMW. Mark Ellman, the British driver with SVG Motorsport, he'll be sharing with Owen Hizzy this weekend as they again get to grips with international GT racing. Some new ventures for them this year as they take on the Evo spec G56. A very exciting grid then, some compelling racing in prospect. I think a factor we need to consider here as well, Andy, is perhaps how little of a role that qualifying order will play on the form book, because of course when they qualified a little earlier this morning, it was still damp on the circuit.
Indeed so. I mean, generally speaking, the cars towards the front of the grid are the ones you would expect to be towards the front of the grid, but the order they're in may well change now that it's dry. We'll have to wait and see, particularly keeping an eye on that Rafa Racing by Racelab McLaren of Callum Davis to come through potentially from 5th on the grid. 2 formation laps as we've seen, the second one nearing completion. The time started to tick down at the beginning of that second formation lap though, so the race technically has started behind the safety car, but we will still have the notional start of the race now, 2x2, with Mackenzie Cresswell and Maximilian Schreier on that front row. Maximilian will know the importance, after seeing the domination from Elite a week ago, he will know the importance of trying to get ahead of that yellow and black McLaren before turn 1.
And of course, we saw last weekend towards the end of the straights, those Porsches with their fairly supple frame were cutting through the air very well. The further you got down the straight, the quicker the Porsche seemed to be, but the McLaren also cuts through the air magnificently versus some of the bulkier front-engine cars further back on the grid. Will it be the yellow and black McLaren that leads into the first corner? They roll and we are underway for the first GT4 Winter Series race of the weekend. They fan out heading towards the first corner. Will everyone find space as it is Cresswell on the inside? Enrico Ferder has got a good start from the second row. Also, the FK Performance BMW. Up on the curbs goes Silvesterson, but he has managed to get past Enrico Ferderer there. Also a good start from Baudouin Detu, and it looked like there may have been some contact there.
Oh, Maximilian Schreier very late on the brakes into turn 3, and maybe a touch between he and Creswell. I think they just avoided it, but he is looking really punchy in the early stages, has a good run out of turn 4, and Schreier forces a defensive move out of Creswell as they drop down into the left-hand hairpin. He can't quite get round the outside. Callum Davis, meanwhile, has lost more ground from where he started, nips to the inside there of Jürgen Bolting, but that was only, Adam, for 6th place.
Yeah, that's not really where he would want to be at the moment. So some shuffling through the order as everyone tried to find room. Some good starts, some bad starts further down the order as well. The 2 Cayman Trophy SR Motorsport cars getting a little close for comfort there as Mikael Sander tries to dispatch Willy Kuhne. And look at Schreier, he's right on the back of Mackenzie Cresswell. Some exciting stuff going on at the sharp end, some exciting stuff going on further back there as we ride on board with the number 18 of Axel Bengtsson. Negotiations going on all through the field. It is still Cresswell at the front, though. It looked for a moment like Schreier had a run. Enrico Ferderer makes contact with Detu at the 12th corner of the circuit, 13th corner of the circuit. Nonetheless, that looked more than a little bit clumsy.
The next words out of my mouth were going to be, how well is Baudouin Detu doing? From 6th on the grid into 3rd, the Aston Martin looking really competitive, and then suddenly it's pointing the wrong way and slipping down the order. That will be looked at. I'm sure he will certainly be hoping that is the case. But Ferderer is not yet out of danger, because now Silvesterson is looking to try and drag the BMW through into a podium place. Creswell hangs on to the lead at the end of lap 1. Schreier second. For 3rd, though, Silvesterson to the inside of Enrico Ferderer. Breaks through at turn 1. Can Enrico get the switch back on the exit? The answer is no, and so BMW to 3rd position, but it is McLaren from Porsche, from BMW, from Mercedes AMG, the top 4, and then the second of the McLarens, Callum Davis, buying in now to this fight for 3rd place.
Yeah, the top 2 getting to break away a little bit there as, of course, Ferderer was rather hindered himself by his contact with Baudouin Detu, who did cross the line in 11th position at the timing line, so he is still there. Silvesterson still there as well with Enrico Ferderer. They're side by side, still for 3rd position. I think the BMW with the nose ahead might manage to get to the corner first. The next proper apex is coming up, but no. Ferderer on the inside line retains 3rd place for now. Here comes Callum Davis. Unfortunately, Benjamin Silvesterson getting hung out to dry there quite significantly by Callum Davis. Silvesterson will be going up here against drivers he's not familiar with. His primary campaign last year came in the Italian GT4 Championship, where he was vice champion. He's familiar with the big BMW, but some competitors he has not fought with previously.
That was really clever driving that from Callum Davis. I don't think there was any contact between he and Silvesterson. He just sort of ushered Silvesterson's BMW to the edge of the road and said, well, make your own arrangements then. Either you stay there and we make contact and you go into the gravel, or you give me 4th place. And in the end, Callum came out of that with 4th position. Behind them into turn 5, Axel Bengtsson made a really late lunge up the inside of Jürgen Bolting. So there, the BWT Mercedes also looking pretty strong in the early stages. We ride on board with Bengtsson now as we get a great view of a part of the roller coaster ride that is the Portimao circuit, up and over the tabletop start finish straight, and the Mercedes looking like one of the quicker cars on the track right now.
Yeah, the BWT Motorsport car doing well. Meanwhile, Jürgen Bolting, who got quite a good start, is now being chased by Tim Hurrell, who fell through the order. And in fact, here comes Peter Lobeck. Lobeck climbing through the order well. I think he's one of the drivers that struggled in the wet conditions. I know Peter isn't a particular fan of the circuits when they get slippery, but he is already up to P8. Unfortunately, Tim Hurrell falling through the order. Baudouin Detu, recovering from his spin in 11th place, is now on the back of Hurrell, who's fallen to 10th just in those first few corners. Ooh. And again, Detu diving to the inside there, and he gives Tim Hurrell a lean, so he's gone, well, First lap, no one gave me any manners, so I'm just going to climb through the order however I need to.
Manners have well and truly gone out the window this afternoon, haven't they? This is very punchy stuff. I have to say, compared to Estoril, certainly, it looks as though the drivers are willing to get the elbows out today, which is very entertaining for us. The teams may have some work to do post-race to get the cars back to showroom condition, but certainly exciting stuff in the early stages. Creswell then 1 3/4 seconds clear of Schreier. Förderer is third, and that contact that he had with De2 is, unsurprisingly, perhaps being investigated by race control. We'll await further news on that one. Such a shame, though, for Budwan, because it really does look as though that car's got some speed in it this weekend. He dispatched Tim Horrell reasonably quickly. Of course, now needs to set off after the top 2 Pro-Am class cars, Peter Loebeg and Ravi Ramyid ahead, before he can then, and indeed Jochen Bolting, the Am leader, before he can even think about chasing down the rest of his pro rivals. But they're two looking more competitive, will be massively frustrated at the way that this race has begun.
The big BMW of Ravi Ramyid there, looking imposing in the mirrors of Loebeg as they come across the line. Jochen Bolting has actually got some reprieve now in 7th place, as they've all started fighting each other behind. It's Loebeg from Ramyid, from De2, from Horrell in the battle for 8th through 11th positions at the moment out on the circuit. I was talking to Baudouin De2 a few days ago. Goodness me, a little bit of touching there, I think, between Loebeg and Ramyid. De2 behind them, who used to be a motocross motorcycle off-road racer, says this circuit is the closest thing he can get to motocross on 4 wheels. Looks like Enrico Förderer has got himself past Schreier. We go to De2, who's got himself past Ravi Ramyid. So a change there for 2nd place. Förderer, who has the fastest lap of the race, he has moved up to 2nd overall. Meanwhile, Baudouin De2 continues his surge up the order.
Wherever you look at him, there is overtaking. This is fantastic racing. That jumbled up grid and then a slightly jumbled up run through the first few corners has certainly given us the blueprint for a very exciting opening half of this race. Enrico Förderer then, under investigation or not, is up into 2nd place. And as you mentioned, the fastest man on the track, in fact 6/10 faster than the leader last time around. He's now in clean air. Didn't really lose any time behind Schreier either, because he made his move pretty quickly, and he will now be searching for that extra little bit of pace required to close in on the race leader. In the middle sector, though, he has lost nearly 2 seconds to Mackenzie Creswell, presumably with that move that he made down into turn 5. So we'll see what the gap is at the end of the lap. That will be the starting point for Förderer, as Schreier now starts to fall back into the clutches of Callum Davis. So the Porsches, Adam, which looked really strong in qualifying, maybe more of a wet weather car, because in the dry they don't look quite as quick as some of those around them.
No, maybe not. The front engine cars dominated proceedings here a year ago in the GT4 Winter Series. The number 31 car getting a bit buck wild there underneath Schreier. That allows Callum Davis a good run into the next braking zone at turn 3. Manages to get through there into the corner and continues on his way. He's going to now try and pursue Enrico Förderer. So that is up to 3rd position now for Callum Davis. 2 McLarens in the top 3. Enrico Förderer last time some 3/10 slower actually than Mackenzie Creswell, though. So even though Förderer has the fastest lap on circuit, he's actually not quite there yet. However, perhaps on this lap, the timing screen tells another story.
Well, in Sector 2 on the previous lap, he was nearly 2 seconds slower than Creswell. He gained all of that back again in the final sector, so I do think Förderer has got what it takes here to catch the leader. He's 2/10 up in Sector 1. We will shortly see the Sector 2 times where he is another
faster.
2/10 quicker. So definitely at this stage of the race, in these conditions, it is the Mercedes the car to have. It's a good job, really, for Mackenzie Creswell that he built that early lead, because within a few laps' time, that lead may well have evaporated.
It's going to be a compelling run to the line here, I think, not just for the lead either. Benjamin Silvesterson, again, looking to prove a point here. He made cameo appearances in ADAC GT4 Germany and the GT4 European Series in 2025. And look at him fighting it out here with Max Schreier. Moving up another position goes the big BMW from FK Performance. Great to have them back in the series. And up into 4th position for now has gone Silvesterson. Axel Bengtsson will now be watching from just behind the Porsche. And the way that Porsche is bucking and weaving on the main straight, I just wonder if there's maybe something amiss at the rear, because it looks as though he's testing the car on the main straight. It's really wobbling and shaking around on the approach of the first turn.
I wonder if they've gone too soft on the suspension.
Maybe.
Because it seems to have a lot of understeer as well. He lost that position there to Silvesterson, really purely because he understeered through the penultimate corner at Sagres, ran out wide from the apex, and Silvesterson nipped straight up the inside. So I wonder if it's just a setup issue, because of course it was wet for qualifying this morning. It is not wet now for the race. We'll keep an eye on that as the rest of the race develops, but strange really for a mid-engined car to have understeer. That's not generally the way that would work. Update on the lead gap, by the way, came down by 9/10 of a second on the previous lap. Enrico Ferreira with a new fastest lap of the race, a 150.8 compared to a 151.7 for Mackenzie Creswell, so 9/10 actually it came down by last time around. And in the first sector on this lap, another couple of tenths have been gained by the second place man, so Ferreira is pushing on. No news yet about any penalties heading his way, so we will for now assume that he is in a genuine battle for the race lead.
Yeah, it looks like it could well be. As we said last year, this car was very quick in the GT4 Win Series at this circuit. It was largely Mercedes versus Aston Martin 12 months ago here at the Autódromo Internacional do Algarve, and it's the Mercedes that is now in pursuit of Mackenzie Creswell in the McLaren. But we saw last time out at Estoril that the Elite Motorsport team seemed to be managing as well as dominating at the wheel of the number 77 McLaren Artura. It seemed as though they were just managing things at times, but Ferreira is still definitively closing on Creswell. 4/10 taken out on that lap as well. By the time we get to the last moments of this race, we could have those two in a dogfight.
Yeah, I mean, he took another 4/10 that time. I think had a mistake in the middle sector because he dropped a couple of tenths again in sector 2, but still over the lap, comfortably faster than the McLaren. It always has been a good front-engine circuit, Portimao, because it has lots of very long, low and medium speed corners. And with all of that extra weight over the front axle of the big engine, you'd think that might generate understeer, but it doesn't. It plants the front tyres into the ground, gives you lots of front traction, and always we've seen, whether it be GT3 or GT4, a Mercedes or an Aston Martin has often been the car to have, and Enrico Ferreira is sort of proving that here. The mid-engine McLaren is agile, it gets off the corners well, it changes direction well, but sometimes you just want a bit more weight over the front of the car through the long corners, and that has often been the Mercedes AMG's advantage. Ferreira utilising that well at the moment. We are, though, halfway through the race, and he's still got another couple of seconds worth of real estate to try and cross, so a lot of work to be done before he's even within striking range.
And of course, on the first lap of the race at turn 13, there was that contact with Baudouin de Two. That is under investigation. We'll have to see whether an investigation is concluded favourably for Enrico or not. SR Motorsport will have their fingers firmly crossed in that regard. I think that gap is going to have gone down once again as they cross the line this time by, it has indeed, 1.6 seconds down from 2.2. So it is looking like more and more of a battle, and so is third position as well. Silvesterson is hunting Callum Davis right now, and Schreier, who again, look at that car shaking down the main straight, is under pressure from Axel Bengtsson.
Wonder whether he did have a knock with Creswell on that opening lap. It would have been side to side, could have knocked the alignment out slightly at the back of the car. That would explain, wouldn't it, that sort of wobble that it's got going down the straights. GT4 cars are pretty advanced bits of kit. They shouldn't really be doing that in a straight line, so who knows. But yeah, interesting. We've got these three pairs at the front of the field, and all of them very similar to each other. We've got a mid-engine car being chased by a front-engine car, and it seems to be at all times the front-engine car with the advantage, both in pace and, in the case of Axel Bengtsson, track position. Now he's ahead of Maximilian Schreier, although Schreier coming back at him as they climb the hill. There's almost a bit more wheel banging there as they get to the top of the track. Schreier sends it into the right-hander at turn 7 and chops across to the inside into the Samsung corner. Keeping, for now, Bengtsson in his rear-view mirror, but Bengtsson not for the first time in this race, Adam. Pretty brave on the brakes into turn 5.
Yeah, great to watch Bengtsson here, now approaching turns 10 and 11 of the circuit, trying to find a way past Maximilian Schreier. For both drivers, this is a new circuit to them. Bengtsson has more racing experience. It's largely, though, come in his native Scandinavia. recently competing in the Swedish Touring Car Championship, and now moving back into petrol racing, of course. The STCC is now electric powered, and seemingly taking to the BWT Muka Motorsport Mercedes very nicely here in this battle for fifth. The top two come past me, another 2/10 go down, 1.4 second between the top two, and the nose being rather rudely cut off Axel Benson there as they go through that sweeping final corner.
Well, it was an odd place to have a look to the inside. He wasn't close enough to get an overlap really against Schreier, and I think by going in on a tight line, he really did struggle to get through the corner. That Porsche is wobbling more and more, I think, down the straight, to the point that it's almost looking a bit dangerous, isn't it? Like something is about to let go, and you really don't want that to happen at the end of the main straight, the fastest point on the circuit. I think it's something in the right rear corner. He's wide again at turn number 3. Lagos, there's more paint traded between the two of them as the tour was well and truly closed once again in the face of Axel Bengtsson, who will really want to try and deal with this Porsche as quickly as possible. Is there another lunge to be had at turn 5? No, not quite close enough into Torre VIP on this occasion, but another fairly physical exchange.
It looks to me like it's particularly struggling with right-hand slow corners. We'll keep an eye on this battle as it continues on. Axel Bengtsson trying his best to find a way past the Porsche Cayman, which incidentally now 6 seconds up the road is that battle for third and fourth place. So it's clear that Schreier is not able to match the pace. Something is amiss with the car, but for Axel Bengtsson, it's about getting past at a good place and doing so safely before anything else can go wrong for him. I alluded to the potential of investigation leading to penalty for Enrico Ferderer, and the number 11 car hunting down the leader in second place has been summoned for a drive-through penalty for that first lap contact with Baudouin Detu.
Well, that is a shame. It was fairly predictable, I think, but that is a shame because that was setting up to be a fascinating battle. The gap was down to 1.1 seconds that time around, so Ferderer, unfortunately, is going to have to pay a visit to the fairly lengthy pit lane here at the Autódromo Internacional do Algarve, and that will lose him not only second place but several other positions as well. Have we also lost Maximilian Schreier to the pit lane? I think we have. So Schreier admitting defeat, I think. The Porsche Cayman just was not handling as it should be, and he, I think, does the sensible thing there really, Adam, and brings the car to the attention of the pit crew. They can then identify the problem, get it fixed. Much easier to fix one broken component than a demolished car should something have let go at high speed.
Absolutely right. Meanwhile, Baudouin Detu is under pressure from Tim Horrell here. Tim Horrell, sorry. Tim Horrell is second in Pro-Am right now. The Pro-Am class leader is Peter Lobeck, who is just ahead of them, as you can see there, the all-black Porsche Cayman. So Baudouin Detu here is in a difficult situation because he's battling a determined Tim Horrell, and not only is he determined, but he's probably, frankly, looking past the Aston Martin to see what's going on with the class leader just ahead. Now, of course, Baudouin Detu has every single reason to defend the position, every right to defend the position, but sometimes when you're a driver fighting someone that you know is really looking past your car, that can be a bit dangerous.
Indeed so. It's one of the fascinations of multi-class racing, isn't it? Especially multi-class racing where the cars are essentially of the same performance, which of course is what we have with GT4 racing these days. And yeah, you will find yourself getting involved in other people's battles. I would say though, both of them are catching Lobeck slightly on this lap. So actually not the worst thing that Horrell could do here to just sit behind Detu, who should be the quicker driver, and follow him up to the back of Peter Lobeck's Cayman. If Baudouin were then to make a move, perhaps Tim Horrell could take advantage of that as well. But they round the penultimate corner. As they do so, Enrico Ferderer, I spot, has visited the pit lane now to serve that drive-through penalty. So into second place comes Callum Davis, having started fifth on the grid, and Silvesterson up into third position. He started seventh on the grid, so some big movers in this race.
Yeah, some big movers up, some big movers down. Wet qualifying translating into a dry race just a couple of hours later. Here comes Tim Horrell then as they run down to the first corner, Primera Bend. And for now, Detu holds on. Ahead of them, exiting the pits, has come the Enrico Ferderer car. It is still in 6th place, I believe it will be once everything has worked out, which actually moves Ravi Ramyid in the invitational class, effectively Pro-Am driven car, the BMW M4 GT4 Evo. That's up to P5 in the overall standings. In fact, no, he is 6th still, with Federer in 7th place. The timing screen had somewhat caught the number 11 car dropping positions, but not all the way. But Federer is now confirmed in P7. And he has Ravi Ramyid and Jürgen Bulting up ahead. I think there's potential to move through a couple of positions, but let's see what goes on there.
Maximilian Schreier's Porsche there being pushed back into the garage, I think we were seeing. So his race, I'm afraid, is run, but we hopefully will see him back out again for tomorrow's 2 encounters. Right now we have the prospect over the final 6 minutes or so of an Enrico Federer comeback. He's not going to get up into the podium places, but there are cars ahead of him who he should be reasonably comfortably faster than, and some more overtaking I think is to be done here. Federer closing firstly on Ravi Ramyid, the Century Motorsport BMW, looking like a different car this weekend, isn't it? So much more competitive here at the undulations of Portimao than it was at Estoril last time out, and Ravi Ramyid probably has run some laps here. I don't think he was racing in British GT the year that they visited Portimao, but he has almost certainly driven this place before, perhaps not quite so familiar with Estoril, so he's looking quick. And that car could be a factor in the pit stop race tomorrow, because of course that's the race in which he will also be sharing driving duties with Charlie Robertson. We saw how competitive he was last week as well, so probably not the last we're going to see of the Century BMW this weekend. The other BMW in the top half of the field though, Adam, is on the attack.
Yeah, absolutely right. The FK Performance Machine, the 187, they had a small armada of BMW M4 GT4s in the GT4 Germany paddock last year. They were parked in front of the football stadium at the Norris Ring on that GT4 Germany weekend. And it did look like BMW had partnered for a major football tournament, but no, it was just FK Performance. And the FK Performance guys, again, back with us in GT4 Win Series. They did join us as well in 2024. And 2nd and 3rd place very close together on the circuit. I wouldn't mind betting Silvesterson has a late charge. Meanwhile, Enrico Federer right on the back of Ravi Ramyid.
And a 5-second penalty for Callum Davis, I'm afraid. So as there's a positional change here, maybe Federer, not quite ahead of Ramyid yet. They run wheel to wheel down the hill. BMW on the left, Mercedes on the right. And the BMW will have the inside line. Federer late on the brakes. Does he make the move stick here? How aggressive is Ramyid? Very aggressive is Ramyid is the answer. Bits of carbon fibre go flying, and the BMW stands its ground. In fairness to Ravi, he's in the invitational class, so whilst there are some drivers out there who are only picking fights with people within their class, it's not really an option for Ravi. He is out there to get the best result possible and doesn't really care who he gets in the way of in the process of that. As I started to say though, Callum Davis in 2nd place has picked up a 5-second penalty for exceeding track limits. It will be added to his time at the end of the race, but what that does mean is that Benjamin Silvesterson doesn't really need to overtake the McLaren driver now. 2nd place, if he stays where he is, will be his.
Yes, absolutely right. So Silvesterson will no doubt have already been told that by FK Performance. I think we didn't see a lot of the true potential of the M4 GT4 Evo of Ravi Ramyid last time out at Estoril. He was actually the quickest of the bronze-rated drivers in race 1 in similar conditions to these, but in the rain, it looked like they were still trying to master quite how to set up the new Evo spec car. Incidentally, if you're wondering why Ravi Ramyid is in Invitational, the other BMWs are not. Those are the 2024 spec cars. They are GT4 homologated, but the 2025 spec Evo machine with Ravi Ramyid at the wheel, not yet within the homologation pool at the SRO Motorsports Group. Mackenzie Cresswell leading the way by 9.2 seconds over Callum Davis, but we know Davis has a 5-second penalty, so for Silvesterson at this point, it's just kick your feet up, hope the chair is sturdy, and watch on to see, hopefully, a McLaren right in front of you as you take the flag and inherit 2nd place. Axel Bengtsson, meanwhile, is a bit too far back to capitalise in 4th overall, so I think the BMW BWT Muka Motorsport car is unlikely to capitalise on Race Lab's issues, although of course if they continue to have, can we say, track limits related dramas, then that could yet change as well in the pink Mercedes favour. Enrico Ferderer, how close is he to the AM leader Joachim Bulting? The answer is very close, actually. I was going to say it's a handful of seconds, but they just came past my window, less than a second apart. So Enrico Ferderer is on the path to inheriting an overall top 5.
Yes, that would appear to be the case, wouldn't it? Whilst Mackenzie Creswell is seemingly on course for another fairly dominant victory, but another race, really, of what could have been for Ferderer, the nearly man of the GT4 Winter Series, both weekends now. In the opening race of the weekend, he's been a match for Creswell, more so today than he was actually a week ago in Estoril, and something has happened that unfortunately has taken him out of the fight. Now, okay, this one you could say was self-inflicted. He's gone round the outside, I think, of Joachim Bulting there, down at turn 5, so the Mercedes up now into 5th position, but Enrico Ferderer will be a little bit, more than a little bit frustrated, I think, at the way that once again this opening race of the weekend has gone. This, meanwhile, is Portimão de 2 actually struggling now to keep Tim Horrell behind. They've dropped right away from Peter Lobeck, the class leader in Pro-Am, and Tim Horrell wants to try and reclaim 9th position, can't do it to the outside, up into the Samsung complex. The Aston Martin, which looked so rapid at the start of the race, just hasn't quite had that pace through the second half.
No, not quite, but let's see whether Tim Horrell can find a way past the big British brute car. 35 seconds of the race left to go, so Cresswell just crossing the line now. Is starting the final lap of the race. We ride on board with the number 77 Elite Motorsport car there briefly as it runs past the rather imposing main grandstand here at the Autódromo Internacional do Algarve. And we are on the way to a four-peat here. He's less than a lap away from continuing Elite Motorsport's 100% record in the GT4 Win Series of 2025. Half a second between the second and third place cars behind him, but of course we know Callum Davis has a 5-second track limit penalty to consider with Benjamin Silvesterson on his rear, so Silvesterson is going to get to move up. It seems as though Axel Bengtsson is starting to struggle out on circuit. He did a 1:53.4 last time by. Enrico Ferderer, less than 2 seconds behind him, was about 1.7 seconds quicker on the previous lap. So we need to keep an eye on 4th and 5th position as well out there on circuit. Bengtsson and Ferderer may yet have a change of place.
Yeah, it's not even like Ferderer is going massively quickly. He's a full second away from his previous best lap time, although in fairness, everybody is around a second away from their previous best lap time. I would say we've got more tyre degradation today than we had a week ago in Estoril. So, yeah, it's not like he's going particularly quickly. He's in, of course, the same machinery, really, as Axel Bengtsson ahead. So you have to assume it is setup related again. Bengtsson's car may be using up its front tyres a little bit more. That's the flip side, isn't it, of the front versus mid-engine debate. The front engine cars maybe are quicker at a circuit like this through the mid and low speed corners, but they will use up those front tyres a little bit more. More weight over them, more pressure into the ground, generates more grip, but more wear. The checkered flag, meanwhile, is being prepared, and indeed has been waved, I believe, for Mackenzie Creswell. There he is, Elite Motorsport, for the 4th race in a row, are victorious.
Yeah, Mackenzie Creswell takes the win then. Callum Davis takes the flag second. He won't join you on the podium on the second spot. And as you displace yourself for your next job, it will be Benjamin Silvesterson that ultimately drops or moves up to second place. And look at that drag race. It was Axel Bengtsson just in 4th position. Enrico Ferderer has to settle for P5. Joachim Bulting, our AM winner, holds off Ravi Ramjeed. Here comes Peter Lobeck to take 8th overall, and it will be Baudouin Detu who just about holds off Pro-Am runner-up Tim Horrell in the number 30 car. Meanwhile, 11th place goes to Franz Linden. Just going across the line there is Jose Garcia in the AM class Porsche Cayman GT4. Here comes Cayman Trophy winner Franz Linden, though. He'll be next across the line. And Linden winning Cayman Trophy from last among the cars in that class. So he dispatches the SR Motorsport machines, and he spent the race having a very good third battle off the circuit with Mark Elman. So Elman crosses the line in P12. Villicuna crosses the line in 13th and second among the Cayman Trophy drivers. He got away from Mikael Sander. Now, usually Sander is the quicker of those two. Has something happened to Sander on the final lap? No, he crosses the line now in 14th. But yes, typically speaking, Sander has the edge over Villicuna, but that doesn't appear to be the case on this weekend. Just one more car to cross the line, and that will be Thilo Gus in the number 700, which will win the club class of this race. The other cars all a lap down: Martin Kroll, Jose Garcia, and of course the non-finisher in the form of Maximilian Schreier. Meanwhile, Cresswell is heading already almost back to the pit entry point, and Elite Motorsport will be very satisfied with a race win in this first of the weekend. Their 100% record continues. 4 races so far in the GT4 Winter Series, and 4 wins from those 4 races. Very impressive effort so far from the drivers of that black and yellow McLaren. A word as well to Callum Davis in the 812 car. He will ultimately be classified 3rd despite crossing the line in P2. And Benjamin Silvesterson will cross the line, or has crossed the line, of course, 3rd on the road, but has claimed 2nd place here for FK Performance Motorsport. Delight, though, for Mackenzie Cresswell, who, of course, is doing his first GT4 races with us here in the GT4 Win Series. Graduates from the world of GB3 competition, where he was also partnered with the elite team, and he has quite the teammate, of course, in his hands in the form of Josh Rattigan, the defending GT4 European Series silver champion. At least reigning. I think he might be defending the title as well. But a very strong new driver to the GT4 end of the Elite Motorsport workshop in the form of Mackenzie Cresswell, further solidifying what we know he can do in a GT4 car for Elite Motorsport. However, there are some what-ifs there, aren't there? What would have happened if Enrico Federer didn't have that contact with Baudouin Detu on the first lap of the race, subsequently, of course, getting a drive-through penalty, and yet still he was almost 4th position at the end. He got his 5th place back, nearly crossed the line in 4th after a drag race with Axel Bengtsson, and also at the end of the race he was half a second quicker than anybody and a full second a lap quicker than the race winner Mackenzie Cresswell. So I think that potentially that SR Motorsport Mercedes, the GT4 car, is one to be reckoned with this weekend. For now, though, the GT4 Winter Series race winner, your first of the weekend, is Mackenzie Cresswell, and Izzy Browning is down under the podium.
Indeed, I am, Dan, with our race winner, Mackenzie. 100% race win record continues for you guys, but a little bit more pressure at the start there.
Yeah, for sure, a little bit. First lap was quite a tussle, so yeah, put a little bit more pressure than usual, or than last weekend. But yeah, I managed to stay in front on lap 1, which was my goal going into it, and then yeah, the Mercedes moved up into P2, and yeah, he was pretty quick throughout, so I was really having to manage the gap as best I could, and just extract the maximum that I could out of the car. So yeah, not quite as easy as last week, but yeah, still pleased with the win.
And the Mercedes that you just talked about ended up with a penalty. There were a couple of penalties in that race. When you found out about that, were you a little bit happy, a little bit more relaxed?
I guess you could say so, yeah. It took a little bit of the pressure off, but I mean, ultimately it's not a long race. You need to be pushing throughout, so yeah, I just was making sure I was doing my job right and kind of just doing my own thing, not really worrying about what other people were doing on track. So yeah, it took a little bit of the pressure off, but I still put pressure on myself. So. And
a first time here and a first win. Did you have fun out there?
I did have fun, yeah. I like the track, so yeah, Carl's amazing as well, so huge thanks to Elite. They've done a great job. Yeah, I had good fun.
And another race tomorrow. Obviously, Josh will jump in tomorrow morning. I'm sure you guys will have a debrief and give him a little bit of a tip for tomorrow. All McLaren front row for tomorrow with the 812 just behind you, alongside you. What's possible?
It's going to be tough for sure. There's some really quick cars out this weekend, so we really need to be on our A game. But yeah, there's no reason we can't go and do what we did last weekend and win both races on the Sunday. So we're going to debrief, as you said, look through the data, through the onboard to see if there's anything else we can find and reset, go again tomorrow.
All right, well, congratulations. We'll let you get up to the podium, go enjoy it. There is our first race winner of the day, Mackenzie Cresswell. We'll go back up to you for highlights of what was quite a busy race.
Always a busy start when the GT4s are first on the programme. The GT4 Winter Series delivering another very compelling intro to our weekend here in the GEDLICH Racing Winter Series. Let's take a look back at that first race. So it was fanning out as we approach the first corner of the race. The elite motorsport car, Mackenzie Cresswell, from pole position, led the way. Ian Drode getting in amongst the action there as well. There was not contact between the 77 and the 31 down at turn 3, as I thought there was initially, but they were a little bit close, and it seemed as though Maximilian Schreier was having some issues with the balance of the car. Equally, the Cayman Trophy battle getting quite close quarters as well in the first lap, but the first real drama also came later in lap 1. Baudouin Detu, who had a brilliant start to get himself up to P3 on the first lap, knocked into a spin there, unfortunately, by Enrico Federer, for which Federer would soon be penalised. Benjamin Silvesterson penalised Enrico Federer in his own way by getting past the number 11 SR Motorsport car, but that wouldn't last long. The Mercedes sneaking back past. Then Callum Davis also, with a bit of a lean, got past Benjamin Silvesterson's FK Performance BMW. Tim Horrell struggling a little bit for balance as well in the W&S Motorsport car. Both W&S cars falling through the field a little bit during the race. Just wondering if maybe the cars were still set up for weather conditions that we had earlier in the day. Horrell getting into it with Baudouin Detu, and that battle would continue all race long as Detu continued on after spinning the car earlier in the race. Enrico Federer taking a hunk of curb on his way past Maximilian Schreier. Schreier, meanwhile, under significant pressure from Callum Davis. Davis would find his way through, and unfortunately Schreier would only continue to fall through the order. This was Axel Bengtsson getting by, well, nearly getting by. A hip check between the two of them, just delaying the inevitable a little bit longer. Meanwhile, it was an all-white battle for second place. The McLaren Race Lab car just ahead of the FK Performance BMW. One of them is a white livery, I think, by design. The other hasn't been liveried quite yet. Enrico Federer, post-drive-through penalty. He was trying to make his way back through the order, but Ravi Ramyid was having none of it, not letting him through for as long as possible, but eventually the 18-year-old youngster in the SR Motorsport Mercedes found his way by, and some great racing right on the edge of what you can get away with between those two. Joachim Balting got into it as well with Ravi Ramyid. Ramyid would be trying to find his way past the Porsche Cayman. It was not to be, and at the front of the order, Mackenzie Cresswell drove away from the rest of the pack. Benjamin Silvesterson inherited second place because of a track limit penalty for the 812, and Axel Bengtsson there just beating the SR Motorsport Mercedes to the flag, but Cresswell unbeatable once again for Elite. So a look at the results then. Elite Motorsport on top of our first GT4 Winter Series race of the weekend. Benjamin Silvesterson taking second place in the FK Performance Motorsport BMW. Race Lab's Callum Davis taking third place. He was ahead of Axel Bengtsson, who just beat Enrico Federer to the line, ahead of Joachim Balting, our AM class winner. Invitational entry, Ravi Ramyid taking 7th overall, ahead of Pro-Am winner Peter Lorbeck. Baudouin Detu for Racing Spirit of Le Mans in 9th place, and Tim Horrell rounding out the top 10 in the number 30 car. Franz Linden for the Speedworks Automotive team taking 11th place overall and winning Cayman Trophy ahead of Mark Ellman in a Pro-Am Ginetta for SVG. Willi Kuna and Mikael Sander next ahead of Thilo Goss. A lap down with Martin Kroll in the 127 Hofer BMW and Jose Garcia in the Lion Speed GP Porsche. Maximilian Schreier unfortunately pulling in after what looked like a race of balance issues for the number 31 W&S Motorsport Cayman. An interesting first race of the weekend then. Some drama, some contact, and some shifts of the order compared to qualifying. We weren't really sure who was going to be on that podium for a good amount of that race. The drivers are venturing their way up there now to receive their accolades for the first time this weekend at the Autódromo Internacional do Algarve. A thrilling race then in the GT4 Winter Series. And we await that podium ceremony.
And we are ready to go then with our first podium of the weekend here at Portimao after a fantastic first GT4 Winter Series race of the weekend. We'll begin with our club class, just the one driver to welcome onto the podium. A big cheer downstairs, please, everyone, for our club winner, Thilo Goss. Congratulations, Thilo, onto the top step of the Portimao podium. I'm going to get out of everyone's way. I'll go and stand over here, I think, to get a good view of the podium. Thilo looking very lonely at the top of that podium. Gets the handshake and the trophy as well. And probably the best sounding car on the grid, I think, will be a popular class winner within the club class. Thilo gets a good reception from the large crowd of team members down below. Congratulations once again to Thilo, our club class winner. We move on now to the Cayman Trophy, and well, we start with two drivers representing SR Motorsport with Schnitzenalm Racing. In third position in the Cayman Trophy, Michael Sander. Joining him on the podium on the second step is Willi Kuhner. But the victory in the Cayman Trophy in race one of the weekend here at Portimao goes to Speedworks and Franz Linden. Some competitive racing as always in the Cayman Trophy, particularly between the two SR Motorsport teammates early on, but it was ultimately Franz Linden who came out on top with a reasonably comfortable victory. He will receive the winner's trophy and smiles all round in the sunshine here in the Algarve after a very eventful opening race of the weekend. Photographs, lots of cameras flashing down below as the drivers huddle together on the top step. Can Franz Linden continue his winning ways tomorrow? Two more races to come, of course, and he will be hoping to try and beat the SR Motorsport pairing twice more here this weekend. So one more round of applause then for the Cayman Trophy podium finishes. Congratulations, guys. We'll move on now then to the AM category, which again saw some pretty interesting racing, but in the end, it was a third-placed finish in the AM class for Lion Speed GTs, Jose Garcia. In second place within the AM class, Martin Kroll. But after a troubled start to the weekend, I think it's fair to say in his GT Winter Series testing sessions, it is a winning start to the weekend for Joachim Bolting, who practically sprints to the podium to celebrate with his fellow AM class top three finishers. Jose Garcia third, Martin Kroll second, but Joachim Bolting on top form in that race. Looked like he was going to be under some pressure mid-race, but able in the end to establish himself out in front as a fairly comfortable class winner. And the Plus Line team will be very, very happy with the way that their weekend has begun. So the top three drivers pose for photographs down below. Two more podiums still to get through. Another round of applause for our AM class podium finishes, Jose Garcia, Martin Kroll and Joachim Bolting. Congratulations, guys. You can go and get yourself some shade and a well-earned bottle of cold water. It's turning into a very warm afternoon here in Portugal. Two more podiums then to go through. We now move on to the Pro-Am category, one of the most competitive classes in that first race of the weekend. Third position in Pro-Am for SVG Motorsports, Mark Ellman. The Ginetta driver strolls the third step of the podium. Second place in Pro-Am, another impressive drive for Tim Horrell. Congratulations, Tim. Another impressive performance in the Pro-Am category. He was a real star of the show last time at Estoril. And second position, once again, within class in the first race here in Portimao. So Tim, on to the second step of the podium, which means we can now welcome our Pro-Am class winner for Plus Line, Peter Lobeck. Peter comes home then with a victory in race 1 here in Portimão in the Pro-Am category. And Peter Lobeck with a very strong run in that first race. Again, though, signs point, I would say, to some more competitive racing in Pro-Am. Those top 3 teams all pretty evenly matched on pace, actually, once things settled down. But it was Peter who stole the early advantage and was able to pull clear for the class win. So, once again, photograph opportunity as the pit lane opens for the Prototype Winter Series, coming up next, our second race of 3 here this afternoon. But once again, a big congratulations to our Pro-Am podium finishers, Mark Ellman, Tim Horrell and Peter Lobeck. So we move on momentarily then to the Pro Class top 3, our overall top 3. What a race it was. It looked as though maybe we were in for a McLaren versus Mercedes battle at the front of the Pro category. Didn't quite work out that way in the end. A few things happening to Enrico Ferderer in particular, which took him out of contention. But again, all of the signs point to some very competitive racing in the Pro Class this weekend. We will begin our Pro podium then with our third place finisher, second on the road, but a time penalty for track limits means it's a third place for Rafa Racing and Callum Davis. Callum heads to the third step of the podium, still looking pretty happy with his afternoon's work. Inheriting that second place after the penalty for Callum was newcomer to the series, Benjamin Silvesterson. What a drive that was from the BMW driver, carving his way through the order to end up on the second step of the podium. But a week ago, we were talking about Elite Motorsport. Could anyone beat them? Well, so far, the answer is no. It's a 4th victory of the season in 4 races for Elite. And once again, to the top step of the podium, we welcome Mackenzie Creswell. So Mackenzie Creswell onto the top of the podium. And as I said, it really did look as though he had maybe met his match in that race, but a consistent performance, no mistakes made in the end by Mackenzie, and it is a 4th win from 4 races for Elite Motorsport. They extend with that their GT4 Winter Series Championship lead, and we look forward to seeing whether they can continue that tomorrow. There is talk of rain in the forecast tomorrow. That may well change things around a little bit. But either way, Elite Motorsport will be tough to beat. So one last round of applause, everyone, for our overall top 3 finishers, Callum Davis, Benjamin Silvesterson and Mackenzie Creswell. And with that, we move on to our second race of the afternoon here at Portimão. The Prototype Winter Series drivers arriving on the grid now.
Yeah, the Prototype Winter Series V8s are already rumbling around the circuit. Many of them already down there on the start-finish line. These LMP3 beasts, of course, the second generation LMP3s on this grid in the Prototype Winter Series. Might be the last time we really see these cars in action down here in Iberia. And they are quite the sight and quite the sound around this Autódromo Internacional do Algarve. Izzy Browning is down there in amongst the rumbles from the engines. Let's go down to her now.
I am indeed, and don't they sound lovely? Second race of the day, the Prototype Winter Series. So far, it has been pretty much dominated by Danny Sufi. He is on pole position once again, of course, the reigning Prototype Winter Series champion. I'm going to see if I can speak to a couple of different drivers, because we've spoken to Danny quite a lot. Philip Limburg on the front row as well. He's just being spoken to for now. We might come back to him, but I'm going to see if I can run down a little bit further down the grid and speak to Quentin Joseph, who we haven't spoken to yet. He's in this car here, the number 87. The team are moving out of the way perfectly for me. Quentin, great to see you. How's it going so far? I mean, you've got a pretty nice starting position.
Yeah, it's really good. I was happy with the qualifying. It was really good.
And you've had 2 podiums last weekend. You've had a third and a second. Yeah. So you've only got 1 more to add to the collection, and that's the win, isn't it?
I hope so.
How do you fancy your chances around this track?
I love it. I love the track. It's really nice. It's really fast. We'll see.
All right, wish you best of luck. Thank you for speaking to us. Great to speak to another one of our drivers. Now, we actually do have a new entry on the grid this weekend, and that is this car, the number 10 Racing Spirit of Le Mans car. Now, this is a father-son duo of Christian and Vincent Gizzi. Christian will be starting the race and then be handing over to Vincent, who you can just see. I'm going to see if I can grab a word. Can we grab a word just super quickly? Welcome to the grid, first of all. Great to have you on the grid. Now, you're a father-son duo, is that correct? How is it racing with your father?
Well, it's the first time that we're actually doing a race together, but it's nice. I mean, we're almost sort of the same speed, but we learn a lot from each other, and it's racing with my father, so cool.
And how is he feeling for this race? How do you fancy your chances around this beautiful track, but a tricky one as well?
It's quite tricky, but I mean, in the dry it's a bit easier than the wet if you have good grip. But we're doing well until now, so hopefully we can stay in the position or improve one or two more.
Yeah, you're on the second row. I mean, you've got two quick guys ahead of you, but where do you think you can make the moves to make sure that you're the one that's hopefully taking the checkered flag first?
Well, probably either braking into turn 5 or accelerating out of turn 8. But I mean, the guys that I'm going up against with are a bit higher up in sort of the categorization. So hopefully we can keep them in mind, but let's see.
All right, great insight. Thank you for chatting to us. Good luck for the race. Now, we have just had the 3-minute board go up. I'm going to run back down to the front row because I think Philip is possibly ready for a chat. So before anybody closes the door, I'm going to hurry. Philip, great to see you back on the front row. Last weekend, a great weekend for you. You had a podium in your opening weekend. How are you feeling about this weekend?
Feeling good. Yeah, we have been training a lot, and since Tuesday down here, and we have done a lot of tests and improving. So yeah, we're ready for the battle.
And you told me earlier in the weekend that you've just done so many laps around this track now. So I'm sure you know it like the back of your hand.
I do, but still space for improvement. So yeah, we take this step by step and push. So great.
And you've got the guy alongside you who has won every single race so far. So I'm sure that you will be hoping that it's you that wins this one. Do you think that's going to be possible today?
Everything is possible, but he has good pace now. So I will hang in there, and if the opportunity is there, I will get it. So let's see. Everything is possible.
All right, best of luck. Thank you very much for speaking to us. Great to speak to Philip. Of course, if you were with us last weekend, you would have remembered that he said that he is in a real race car now. And I think he's very much enjoying his time on this prototype Winter Series grid. Now, I've spoken to quite a few drivers. Always great to get some insights down here. We're going to go to the back of the road quickly before we get chucked off the grid. And we have got John Brownson in the number 3 DKR engineering car. And then to complete the grid, the number 12 racing experience car of Wolfgang Peyer. He actually said to Danny Soufi last weekend, Danny, I think it's time to let someone else win. So we shall see if somebody else does win in this race. And we've just got the 1-minute board. Perfect timing. Enjoy this race.
The Prototype Winter Series race is about to roll. As with all races in the Prototype Winter Series, we have 2 formation laps here. Time to get some heat into the tyres. These Michelin tyres on the prototype machines. It will be Danny Soufi in the Austrian-flagged Conrad Motorsport car. I think that's where that flag comes from for the Texan driver. He is alongside Philip Lindberg, the Dane, in the Danish entered high-class racing car. Both of those machines are Ligiers. It is a Ligier front row and a Ligier second row. Quentin Joseph is third on the grid in the CLX Motorsport car. He is alongside Christian Gysi in the car from Racing Spirit of Le Mans, the German father-son duo lining up fourth on the grid. The Duquesnes on the third and final row of the grid. John Brownson for the DKR engineering team. He lines up fifth on the grid alongside Wolfgang Peyer, and as you can see by the flags there, both of those teams are hailing from Luxembourg, albeit with very different backgrounds in motorsport. I think that's one of the interesting things about this Prototype Winter Series grid in general. Of course, the cars are very evenly matched. We know that to be true. The LMP3 class often provides exciting prototype racing, wheel-to-wheel stuff all across the world. But here in the Prototype Winter Series, we obviously don't have as big of a grid number as we do in GT4 or in the GT Winter Series, but what we do have is quite a broad array of teams, a broad array of drivers on the circuit, whether it's Conrad Motorsport, who have entered Le Mans a couple of dozen times and had some fabulous successes in every major GT racing and sports car event in the world, whether it's relatively young teams like Racing Spirit of Le Mans, CLX, or teams like Racing Experience, who majority of their early tenure as a racing team came through hill climbing and big open single-seater racing, Boss GP action. Very different teams on this grid. They're just going on to their second formation lap now. But it's an interesting little section of the paddock, isn't it? The Prototype Winter Series end of the garages. There's people from all sorts of backgrounds among these cars.
Yeah, I think we touched upon this last time maybe, but LMP3 in particular as a category sort of sits perfectly in between for me, GT racing and prototype racing, and so it does attract people from all different walks of life, really. You've got those who have come up through a single-seater category, or the single-seater categories, and are aiming to get into prototype racing. You've also got those who have a GT racing background, and this is an obvious first step, sidestep maybe, across into the world of prototypes, because these cars actually drive quite a bit like a GT3 car, really, because they are not the grippiest of prototypes. They're fairly heavy as well, so it's quite a relatively straightforward transition over from GT racing into LMP3. So yeah, you do get drivers even coming from maybe a touring car background to give LMP3 a go. And actually, for the smaller grid, the racing in Estoril certainly was still intriguing. Okay, you don't have those big multi-car battles necessarily that develop across the other two categories, but it is fascinating over a longer race, 50 minutes, remember, the distance in both the prototype races, with the pit stop in there as well, and the extra dynamic that a driver change may bring to a car's relative speed. It certainly wasn't the case, was it, Adam, that Danny Soufi was simply the fastest driver on track at all times? Certainly not the case. So, the racing was intriguing. The timing screen often is where much of the excitement is to be found, and we'll be monitoring that intently over the course of the next 50 minutes to see what the story of this race will be.
50 minutes plus one lap in this race. Pit window is from minute 20 of the race to minute 30, and mandatory pit stop times for these teams and drivers to consider. For the all-silver ranked drivers, it is 151 seconds. That affects our front row of the grid, Danny Soufi and Philip Lindberg. For the bronze-gold combinations, or bronze-silver combinations, David Drew, Quentin Joseph, they have a 122-second visit from pit in to pit out, and the same applies to Lawrence Hur and John Brownson. Then it is 120 seconds for Matthias Bier-Jakobsen and Wolfgang Peyer, as well as Vincent and Christian Gysi. So then, we are almost ready to go racing here. They're approaching the final corner in the Prototype Winter Series second formation lap. And then for the third time this season, in our second destination of the Winter Series Portuguese Tour, we will go racing. Can anybody break the stronghold of Conrad Motorsport, that Ligier JSP 320 in the distinctive black and green, and indeed its pilot, Danny Soufi? We're about to find out as Philip Lindbergh is alongside Quentin Joseph, Christian Gizzi down there on row 2 of the grid. They're rolling. The red lights are on, the red lights go off, and we are underway. Let's see who leads it down to the first corner. It looks like Soufi's got the start that he needs. Lindbergh might be in trouble though. Quentin Joseph to his inside. Lindbergh has to take all of the brave pills to stuff it around the outside and retain P2. And looks like Brownson has moved up to 4th place at the expense of Gizzi as well. So the DKR engineering car moves up into P4. That's a positive start for the number 3 machine that, of course, will be quicker later on as well in the hands of Lawrence Herr. I think we're going to have an interesting battle developing here. John Brownson, 71 years of age, has been racing for over 2 decades, really knows these LMP3 cars in particular. Quentin Joseph just ahead of him, someone who is still very much new to motorsport in his second meeting of the season. He's only really done about 7 or 8 meetings total as a racing driver, including a couple last year in LMP3. And then you've got Christian Gizzi just behind, who has done some LMP3 racing previously as well. But I suspect that 3rd, 4th, 5th place battle just going now through turn 10, 11, as different as their experience levels are, I think there's going to be some parity in this scrap.
Certainly seems to be the case so far, doesn't it? This group not really separating at all. John Brownson in the middle of it in the number 3 car, number 87 Quentin Joseph at the front, and well, Quentin actually 2nd place in the championship after the opening 2 races at Estoril, notched up a 3rd in race 1, a 2nd in race 2. Of course, it was John Brownson and Lawrence Herr who were quick in the first race, and then I think Lawrence had a spin, didn't he, in race number 2, which dropped them down the order slightly. So yeah, this could be an interesting battle, not only for 3rd in the race, but within teams who are quite close, early days though it is, in the championship standings. It's a 3.3 second lead for Danny Soufi at the end of lap 1 though, with Philip Lindbergh about 4 seconds clear of this 3-way fight for 3rd. Joseph Brownson and Gizzi together, and Wolfgang Peyer about 15.5 seconds back. Must have had some dramas on that opening lap.
Of course, for Christian and Vincent Gizzi, their pit stop time is actually only 2 seconds shorter than the 2 cars ahead of the number 10 right now, the 5th place Ligier, which in a way is going to be a bit hard really for them, given that it's going to be pro drivers in the 2 cars ahead of them for the second stints. They're really going to have to work across this race to try and stay in the hunt for a podium position. We'll see how that battle unfolds. I think Christian Gizzi will be somewhat aware of the fact that he has to do some work here before handing over to son Vincent later on in the race. I must say, that Racing Spirit of Le Mans car, a new addition for this weekend. Of course, we had M Racing here at Estoril a week ago, so a different Ligier has rolled out of a truck for this weekend's racing, and it's a very handsomely prepared thing by Racing Spirit of Le Mans. The gold and blue, rather fetching colour scheme. Then again, just ahead of them, the polar opposite, the all-carbon DKR engineering, firmly in test day spec. Looks fabulous in its own right as well. Danny Soufi will be very happy with the time deltas he's being fed from the pit wall. 2 laps into the race, 6 seconds worth of lead.
Possible attack though coming here from John Brownson towards Quentin Joseph. He was a little bit closer coming onto the main straight, and Joseph is sideways there through the first corner. The back of the car just stepping out ever so slightly. That will be music to the ears of John Brownson if he senses that Joseph's car is not quite as underneath him as Quentin would like. But no move coming so far from John Brownson. But yeah, Danny Soufi really doing well out in front. 6 seconds the lead, as you said. Building that margin. But then he did this in the first half of race 1 in Estoril. The second half of the race, the gap did start coming down a bit. So it's important really for Danny to try and pull as significant a margin now as he can, because the second half of the race might not be quite as comfortable. But yeah, he will certainly be pretty happy. And of course, he's pulling away from Lindbergh at about the same pace that Lindbergh is getting away from the third place scrap, which makes its way up and over the hill and towards the end of another lap.
Yeah, interesting battle then in the midfield of this race. Wolfgang Peyer a little bit further back in 6th position. At the moment in the Racing Experience number 12 car. Of course, that'll get taken over by Matthias Bjerre-Jacobsen later on in the race. There's a little bit of a lock-up there from John Brownson. We saw a week ago as Brownson has a little look to the inside at turn 14. We saw a week ago with Philip Lindbergh, once he flat-spotted the tyre, once he had a lock-up, he couldn't stop the under-rotation of that front left tyre. So Brownson has to be careful. We ride on board with him at the moment in the slipstream of Quentin Joseph. Is he going to be close enough into the first corner? Great view here from the number 3, and he is looking to the inside. I didn't think he was close enough. John Brownson has other ideas. Quentin Joseph there abiding quite nicely, allowing him to get the corner, but he's got to be careful because now he's leaving the open door open to Gizzi, and Christian Gizzi unfortunately wasn't afforded the same luxuries. I'm not sure Quentin Joseph was fully cognizant of how close the number 10 car was as he turned in there, and unfortunately Quentin Joseph falls down to 5th.
Yeah, that was unfortunate because that was a great scrap, and shame that it had to end that way. Christian just didn't want to let Brownson get away, and also wanted to strike whilst the iron was hot. As soon as you're overtaken as a driver, it's quite difficult actually to get back into the rhythm again, and Quentin, having just been overtaken by John Brownson, may have just been a bit more vulnerable to attack than he normally would have been, and Christian Gizzi really wanted to take advantage of that. So Gizzi saw the chance, got to the inside, and unfortunately just tagged to the back of the number 87 car. No major damage done to either vehicle, though, I don't think, so they should be able to both continue on their way. And of course what it does mean is that Brownson, freshly now positioned in 3rd place, has a bit of breathing room back to the now 4th placed Racing Spirit of Le Mans car of Christian Gizzi. So yeah, shame that ended in contact. It had been a really entertaining battle to that point, but you could sort of feel that something was brewing.
Yeah, no, as soon as the DKR car got to the inside there at turn 1, you got the feeling the next few corners were going to be a scrum, and it can be very difficult to go wheel to wheel in these LMP3 cars. There are some blind spots to be had in the cockpit of these cars. Now Christian Gizzi then chasing John Brownson. Gizzi is the father of that father-son duo in the number 10 Racing Spirit of Le Mans car. 58-year-old racer who actually has joined us previously in the GEDLICH Racing paddock in 2021 in the GT Winter Series. That was back when GT4 cars were a part of the main GT Winter Series grid, and he did some preparation for the GT4 European Series in 2021 in GT Winter Series. Has been racing with Racing Spirit of Le Mans quite a lot in recent years in Le Mans Cup and Ultimate Cup. And I think a partial campaign on the agenda this year, wherever he can really go racing when his work-life balance allows him to go racing. But obviously that's one of the exciting things sometimes about the Winter Series, is at a time where usually there isn't racing to do. If you happen to have free weekends and live the kind of lifestyle that allows you to go prototype racing, there is a platform.
Indeed so. I was sort of mesmerised then by the onboard footage we were getting from John Brownson's car there. A brilliant view of the top end of the circuit in particular. You really do get a great idea of not only the undulation and the challenge of the circuit, but also the amount of grip these cars do have when they get going. And you see it particularly here through the final corner. Over that crest, the car goes light, but the downforce sort of plants it back down on the ground. Very, very spectacular cars to watch trackside, these LMP3 cars. And perhaps none more spectacular to watch than the Conrad Motorsport number 1 machine, because that is still comfortably the fastest car on track, and Danny Sufi just at a 1:39.0, the fastest lap of the race so far. Qualifying times, by the way, just to give you an idea of how much the track conditions have improved, pole position was a 52.6, so we are already 13 and a half seconds quicker than we were going earlier on, and it wasn't even fully wet for the prototype session. But now conditions very much coming to the drivers, and particularly Danny Sufi, who is now 13.3 seconds clear of the rest of the field.
And of course, critically as well, he's the better part of 30 seconds clear already as well of John Brownson. 27 seconds is the gap between this man, Danny Sufi, and Brownson in third. And there is a 29-second gap between their scheduled pit deltas. So in half of the time before the window even opens, in the first 10 minutes of the race, with the window set to open at minute 20, he's already built the gap he needs. Sufi, once again, is really a step ahead, seemingly, in this Conrad Ligier, which of course he knows so well from the last 18 months or so of competition. The Ligier, a fairly newly adopted car to Conrad Motorsport. They switched from Ginettas at the end of 2023 in the LMP3 fold, moving into the Ligier JSP 320, and it was paid off with the Prototype Win Series title, their first proper campaign with the car, and Vice Championship status for Sufi in Prototype Cup Germany last year. It just seems that there's been a bit of a connection there, a bit of a spark between Sufi, that car, and that team. It's a killer combination.
Yeah, and he just seems very confident, doesn't he, when you see him walking around the paddock. He knows that he's in a good place at the moment, that he's executing at a high level, and yeah, he is going to be tough to beat. There's no two ways about it. Did make a little mistake there, though, just as you started talking about how well he was doing. Did you spot that at the last corner? Pitched it into the corner, missed the apex slightly, and you heard him jump out of the throttle, because if you do that at the final turn, again, the car goes light over that crest, you just can't get the car to turn, and he was then on the dirty side of the road. So, you know, he's pushing hard, he's closer perhaps to the edge than anybody else is, and that's why he's going just as quickly as he is. But even Danny Sufi exploring the limits of the grip that these LMP3 cars have.
It's the thing a driver coach will never tell you, of course, is that the quicker you're going, the quicker it can go wrong.
Yes.
And perhaps Sufi on that limit of adhesion, you can see the car porpoising there through the final corner, up over the crest, onto the main straight here of the Autódromo Internacional do Algarve. Such a flowing and fabulous circuit. We had the Portimão quote on the GT4 grid walk, which is the word roller coaster followed by ups and downs. I interviewed every driver I could get about that last year here in the Win Series paddock, and I heard that from about 6 different people, some of whom put their whole body into the up and down description on the video we did last year. We have, though, a replay here of the moment a couple of laps ago between Christian Gizzi and Quentin Joseph. So this is going into turn 3. Gizzi sees the inside opening up. A little bit clumsy from both parties, but on that second viewing there, I think less Quentin cutting him up and more perhaps Christian being a bit ambitious.
It's a difficult one because we see that happen a lot into turn 3 here at Portimão, don't you? Because it's a relatively slow corner. It's quite a big braking zone, but not a very long straight coming before it. So the natural line through turn 2 takes you out wide to enter into the sharp right-hander at turn 3. It leaves the door open for that sort of attack, but actually you don't do an awful lot of braking into the corner. So difficult to get the move made cleanly. It wasn't made cleanly on that occasion, and it is being investigated by the stewards, I can tell you, as we speak. So we'll see again whether we get a penalty for that. It reminded me a little bit of the collision that we had with Enrico Federer in the race earlier in Budwanda 2. This one perhaps a little bit of a later lunge, but that's the nature of a prototype. You will make those later lunges because the cars are better on the brakes. It's a tougher move to make, really. So yes, we shall see if a penalty is incoming, but Christian Gizzi, in fairness, is now sort of recalibrating a bit after that. He lost a fair chunk of time in the contact, dropped a few seconds behind behind John Brownson, but on the previous lap, Adam, was 2.2 seconds quicker than Brownson, who admittedly I think made a mistake, but I think that gap is continuing to creep down now on this, the 8th lap of the race.
Yeah, that's an interesting situation, isn't it? As we saw before when all 3 cars were together on the circuit, pretty close stuff, and we're continuing to see that now, although Christian Gizzi into the pit lane for the drive-through penalty. So a drive-through penalty has been awarded to the number 10 car. We said it was similar to the Enrico Ferder incident in the GT4 Win Series race, and sure enough, the penalty is identical.
And the timing of the penalty almost identical as well.
Yes.
Just as Gizzi was catching Brownson and the battle was almost on, sadly we neutrals are robbed of it. But yes, the decision taken there that Christian Gizzi had earned himself a drive-through penalty, and of course that won't count, needless to say, as his mandatory visit to the pit lane. He'll have to come back again during the pit window, which will open in just over 5 minutes' time. So we are ticking towards that crucial moment in the race where the dynamic can sometimes shift from car to car as second drivers jump in. Not everyone, of course, being joined by a second driver, but those who are sharing, we are almost at the point at which the driver changes will happen. Gizzi then rejoins into clean air, of course, but quite a long way behind Quentin Joseph. And rightfully so, really, because it was Quentin who he tipped into the spin. And, of course, it therefore makes perfect sense that he has now to work hard to catch back up to him. It does, though, sadly mean that everyone is fairly well spread out, at least for the time being.
Yeah, and it's going to make the second part of the race harder for Vincent Gizzi as well, the son of Christian, because, of course, they only have a couple of seconds fewer to spend in the pit lane, 120 versus 122. The pit window for the number 10 car versus the number 3 in the 87, so their pit in to pit out time not so generous compared to the 2 cars that are going to have gold drivers in them for the second phase of the race. And of course that is why Danny Soufi has been pushing and continuing to push that envelope at the front of the field, because yes, he's got the gap now with 45 seconds over John Brownson. Once the pit window is resolved, he should be out in front of Laurent Heur, who will take over the DKR engineering car in third, but you can never be too safe. You can never have too big of a cushion. Philip Lindbergh, of course, has the same pit stop time as Soufi, as they are both silver drivers, so they'll both be spending 150 seconds in the pit. Of course, what that means as well is potentially that Lindbergh could be in amongst it with Laurent Heur post-pit window as well, and perhaps David Drew in the 87 car as well. Gap between the top 2 then at 20.5 seconds. Danny Soufi continues to hustle on at the front of the order, lapping about 1.4 seconds quicker than Lindbergh last time by. Lindbergh, who set his personal best of the race last time by. Here's Wolfgang Peyer looking a little bit slow down the main straight. Yeah, that car not coming past us at full throttle by any means. I wonder quite what's wrong with that number 12 Racing Experience Duquesne.
Yeah, he just went 22 seconds slower than his previous best lap, so definitely an issue. Sounded like a misfire or maybe a gear issue. Let's see, he's crawling his way through the first few corners. Still, the car has some power then, but clearly not running at full speed. I wonder if it is jammed in gear. I'm trying to listen. I don't think he could get it into gear there, could he?
Yeah, something's amiss with the gearing. Also looked like he was struggling to actually get the car turned as well. I'm just wondering if the suspension, if we can look into the next corner on the next camera angle, see if we can have a look at the front right, the closest tyre to the car, because it looked to me like it might be a little bit askew. No, that's okay. So yeah, to your point, as we listen, just... Oh yeah, look, definitely fighting the gearbox a bit, definitely. Had a moment of power there and then it slowed up again. Nonetheless, something amiss with Wolfgang Peyer, and that's a huge shame. Of course, Mattis Bjerre-Jacobsen, who will have been circulating the track the last 3 days practically. We finally get to race time and it looks as though he's not going to have a car to race with.
And that is a massive frustration as a driver, isn't it? Because, as you say, there's a lot of sitting around and waiting on a race weekend. We don't necessarily feel this because we're always doing something. I know it might sometimes appear that we're not, but believe me, we always are, moving from one race to the next. Whereas the drivers who are focusing on one particular race, there's a lot of sitting around and waiting for your time to come. And yeah, massively frustrating when that time does come. And unfortunately, the car is not race ready, shall we say. But anyway, hopefully they'll get that sorted for tomorrow. If it is a gearbox issue, it might be a long night for the mechanics, but it should be fixable. So the team will very much come into their own, I think, as soon as that car comes in. They can start diagnosing and then ultimately rectifying the problem. Luckily, as he's been touring around very slowly on this lap, he's not sort of found himself unwittingly in anybody else's path, so should be able to safely make his way into the pit lane. He has, of course, got a couple of full laps down and has managed to stay out of the quick driver's way in the process. Although the bemused look on Adam Weller's face suggests maybe he did not hit.
No, he did not. He drove past us again with the throttle distinctly at half mast coming across the line. We'll see what happens. Developing story out on the circuit there, let's say. 10 seconds until the pit window opens, and I suspect that for the likes of John Brownson, this man that we have on screen, Quentin Joseph, as well, it'll be shortly thereafter that we see them into the pits. As the pit stop window now opens, I suspect this might even be the in-lap for one or both of them this time by. Let's keep an eye on that, of course. What is the gap between those two out on circuit? It's about 10 seconds, and I think David Drew will tell you, yeah, I can get 10 seconds out of her in the last half hour of a motor race. Two very fast drivers, two drivers with a lot of LMP3 racing experience. I really wouldn't want to pick a winner out of those two, but I'm sure both of them will be of the opinion that, yeah, we're going to get this podium.
Well, that could be an interesting battle to watch, couldn't it? Depending on how the cards fall after the pit stops, which, as you say, are imminent now. But as the pit window has now opened, who is going to be the first to blink? Well, Danny Sufi's been through, so has Philip Lindberg. John Brownson, I think, was the first driver who was eligible to pit because those two had been through before the window opened. So far ahead are they? And Brownson does indeed now come rumbling underneath our commentary position and down into the pit lane. So in comes Brownson, and the number 3 car stationary as Lawrence Herr readies himself to get in. They'll clean the windscreen, they'll check the tyre pressures, maybe lower the pressures slightly as well. They've got plenty of time to get the pit stop done, but Lawrence Herr will want to get in, settled, belted in, and ready to go as quickly as possible. Out gets John Brownson. Lawrence Herr is waiting with his seat insert. Both of them have a seat insert, but of course those things are almost always uniquely designed for a certain driver, even if they're of slightly different heights. They might be of slightly different builds, slightly different physiques, and so driver-specific seat insert is usually the way to go. Lawrence Herr climbs in, team member there to... Oh, sorry, not Lawrence Herr, beg your pardon. This is the 87 car, David Drew we're watching now, gets in, and the team member there to strap him in, and once the time has elapsed, back on his way he will go.
Now, I think there's been an issue for Philip Lindberg that may have an effect on these two cars in the pit. This battle for third may be a battle for second. Lindberg has lost 20 seconds on Sufi in roughly 3 or 4 laps, and he's also lost about 5 or 6 seconds of deficit to John Brownson in the 2 or 3 laps prior to the pit window opening. Now, Lindberg isn't lapping in uncompetitive times. Last time by, he was a 1:43, which isn't great, but it's also not so far off the pace. But I just wonder whether there are some momentary issues or maybe a slight error that Lindberg made out on the circuit. It certainly puts Sufi well clear of the 20 high-class racing car, but the question is that high-class racing car going to find itself in amongst or indeed behind the number 3 and the 87? We ride on board with the number 3 now as Lawrence Herr exits the pits.
I suspect it may be behind because it's a fairly consistent drop of pace, this, isn't it, for Lindberg? Looking at the sector and lap times, it wasn't a mistake, I don't think. I think that car is just going a little bit slower than it should be. So we will keep an eye on that. Christian Gizzi goes across the line, inherits third position for the time being. Back out onto track goes Lawrence Herr in the number 3 car, David Drew in the 87. And yeah, we'll try and pick out Philip Lindbergh, maybe, see if we can identify what the issue is, if indeed there is one. But yeah, dropping now a couple of seconds per sector to Danny Sufi. I know Danny has been quicker than Philip, but not that much quicker.
No, absolutely not. So potentially something amiss with the with the Ligier from High Class Engineering. Our clock has hit 0 on the graphics. I assure you that is not the case. In actuality, 26 minutes of the race remaining, ergo 6 minutes of the pit window remaining, and Danny Sufi will have to abide by that window, of course, and as will Philip Lindbergh. Christian Gizzi has continued on his way, of course, still there in 3rd place. His son Vincent awaits the number 10 Racing Spirit of Le Mans car, and that 3rd place car, yes, it's had a drive-through penalty, is all of a few seconds away from being lapped by Sufi, who has been absolutely dominant at the front of the order. 50 seconds. Yes, circumstances seem to be occurring for Philip Lindbergh as we speak, but a 50-second lead. Sufi, unprecedented levels of comfort at the front. He never had it this easy in last year's series even as well. It does feel like over the summer he's really taking steps forward.
Yes, no, I'd agree with that. Christian Gizzi comes in now from 3rd place, of course, to what's become his second home in this race, the pit lane, his second visit to the pit lane. Danny Sufi in as well. And yes, the number 10 car, having served the drive-through before, now visits its pit crew. And driver change will be done. There will, of course, be no driver change for the Conrad Motorsports squad. Danny Sufi, a solo driver. And so we can expect this car to have similar pace after the stops as it had beforehand. The question is, what pace do the cars behind have? Well, Philip Lindbergh's number 20 car certainly seems to be losing speed. I wonder whether we'll see him in this time around. He's now actually the last driver, I think, not to have made a mandatory pit stop. And still, by the way, consistently losing about 4 seconds a lap or so to the race leader. So whatever the issue is, it's not really rectifying itself, is it? But we'll see if he comes into the pit lane, what the team decide to do. He's due at the line any moment now, and in fact I think has just gone through to take over, for now at least, the lead of the race.
Meanwhile, a shake of the head as the diagnostics laptop is broken out down at Racing Experience. I think Liam Maurer and team trying to diagnose, but not yet getting a good answer out of the car as to why the car was struggling at the tail end of Wolfgang Pye's stint. Unfortunately, unless they can get to the bottom of and indeed rectify that problem, I don't expect Mathias Bjerre-Jacobsen to get a turn at the wheel of the number 12 Racing Experience machine in today's race. Here is then your temporary, more than likely, race leader, the High Class Racing number 20 car in the hands of Philip Lindbergh. And Lindbergh last week was commenting as to how this was a proper race car, LMP3 machine, a bit of a step from the TCR machinery he's been accustomed to in recent seasons. And I'm sure compared to some of the circuits that TCR Denmark tends to compete on, very exuberant circuits. I absolutely love Danish motorsport, to be honest with you, but Jyllandsringen and Portimao are two separate ends of a spectrum for sure. And Portimao, I'm sure, is a circuit that he is reveling in the opportunity to get some mileage at. I suspect Lindbergh, unless he's really wanting to push the envelope, might be due into the pits this time. He's got 2 more opportunities to pit within the window.
Yeah, I was just seeing if I could see anything wrong with that car. Couldn't really. It didn't look obviously slow. I mean, it wouldn't really, because it is only a few seconds a lap off the pace, but off the pace nonetheless it remains. Right, Danny Sufi back into the race. Lawrence Herr, as he did in Estoril in fairness, has jumped into the car and is immediately putting in purple sectors, which means fastest of anybody in the middle sector, a personal best in sector 1 as well. So Lawrence Herr in the number 3 DKR engineering car going quickly. The problem is that Danny Sufi built up such a lead in the opening half of the race that he is surely going to remain uncatchable. There's no reason to suspect that Danny will be going any slower now that he's made a pit stop, and so it will be a tough ask here for Lawrence Herr to close in on him. Lawrence is net second place in the lead. Lindbergh, by the way, is in the pit lane now, and will relinquish the lead back to this man in half a lap's time. Lawrence Herr we'll find out how far back he is from Danny Soufi at the end of the lap, but unlikely to catch. But that doesn't mean Lawrence is going to take things easy.
Absolutely not. No, Lawrence will not want to be able to will not be taking things easy, principally because David Drew will only be somewhere in the region of 10 seconds behind, if that. In fact, it's 13 seconds, 12.4. But nonetheless, you can't really afford to lift out of the throttle when David Drew is that close to you in an LMP3 car. Their last laps were about 6/10 separate, but we'll see how that on timing screen battle evolves, and if indeed it evolves into an on-track battle. Meanwhile, Philip Lindbergh still in the pit lane. He's about to lose the lead that he briefly inherited as Danny Soufi comes charging across the start-finish line. So he will once again resume the lead of the race. And now the next thing is to see quite where Philip Lindbergh comes out in relation to the rest of the field. We're anticipating that it will be behind Lawrence Herr, and it will be behind David Drew. But perhaps that has shifted over the pit window. We'll have to wait and see.
Yes, well, we'll have to wait quite a while, I think, to see, because they're likely the best part of a minute now behind. In fact, no, there we go. Herr comes through in second. 23.2 seconds the difference. I thought that would be a bigger gap, actually,
Yeah.
Soufi to Herr. A much bigger gap, in fact. So I'm not sure what's happened there. Maybe Danny Soufi had a long pit stop. I'll try and work the maths out on that if I can. It was a 4-minute 10 lap, but of course that would have included quite a lot of time stationary in the pit lane. Who was that leaving? Oh, that's Lindbergh leaving, isn't it? Yeah, so he's behind David Drew. Is he behind Vincent Gizzi? I don't think he... no, he won't be, will he? So still ahead of Vincent Gizzi, but quite a long way behind Drew. So 23.2 seconds the lead margin. A further 12 seconds or so back to David Drew in third. Probably 20-odd seconds, I think, back to Lindbergh, who really has lost out.
Yeah, no, Lindbergh with those slow laps somewhere in the middle of that first stint has perhaps cost himself an opportunity to fight for a podium. We get a look here at the high-class racing car.
Ooh.
And potentially a look at why he lost quite so much time. Now, did the car stay in the right direction? We didn't quite see over the crest of the hill, but I'm suspecting it may not have done. We'll have to see. Nonetheless, Lindbergh continues on his way now, just getting those tyres back up to temperature as the racing experience car is pushed into the garage, more than likely definitively for this race, but they'll go for it again, of course, on Sunday in the second of the 50-minute +1 lap races in the Prototype Winter Series. Racing experience have been a part of the LMP3 landscape since 2017, and quite early adopters to the LMP3 category. They've spent many a year taking apart and rebuilding LMP3 cars. I feel fairly confident we'll see that car out again.
Let's hope so, because so far Matthias B.A. Jakobsen hasn't really had any racing experience this afternoon, has he? He's had to sit, I'm here all day, had to sit in the garage and watch on as the car slowly deteriorated. That was not the ideal line through turn 3 for David Drew either. A little bit of a mistake there for him. A point on Philip Lindbergh. I don't know when that off-track excursion that we saw happen, but it is possible, I suppose, that has maybe done some damage to the car, because he didn't lose all of the time in one go.
No.
It started all of a sudden, and then it was a few seconds a lap. So I wonder if he's done something to the under tray of the car. These cars will have not a hugely that's not the word. Not a hugely intricate, thank you. Words are difficult sometimes, even for commentators. Intricate underbelly, but it will have a rear diffuser. The front splitter may have taken some damage, so I wonder whether maybe that is the reason Philip Lindbergh's pace has started to deteriorate. He's running about the same sector times now, I reckon, as he was before the pit stop as well. We'll get a lap time from him at the end of this one, but he's certainly not lighting up the timing screens and is slower in the first sector than all three cars ahead of him. So whatever the issue was, it's lingering, and a little bounce across the grass would do some damage.
Yeah, it very much could. When it comes to generating words in a commentary box, I can tell you from first-hand experience that writing a press release 80 to 90 times over the course of the last couple of months, I found a lot of new words to say the same thing. A little bit of behind the curtain there. Why not? 16 minutes and 40 seconds plus 1 lap left to go here in this Prototype Win Series race here at the Autódromo Internacional de Algarve. Soufi leading by 22.5 seconds. And that gap is coming down, albeit very slowly. 0.3 faster last time was Lawrence Herr out there on the circuit. David Drew at a further 13 seconds back in this, the number 87 CLX Motorsport team. CLX Motorsport, incidentally, that's a name that's fairly new, but we know them better as Cool Racing. The team co-founded by Nicolas Lapierre, who until the tail end of last year was, of course, a factory driver for Alpine in the hypercar category of the FIA World Endurance Championship, a team that has had a lot of success in its brief career in racing. Was previously almost kind of like a sub-brand, a Spirit of Race to AF Corsa over at Graf. But they've since kind of moved on into their own facilities with their own staff and are very much a proper, fully fledged racing team at this point. And great to have them in the Prototype Win Series paddock. And always exciting to see someone like Quentin Joseph come in, someone who's had a lot of enthusiasm for cars all of his life, has been making those formative steps into racing. And I think 2025, from what I've gathered speaking to Quentin, is the year where he's gone, okay, no more part season schedules, let's jump in, I'm doing this properly now.
Yes, that often happens, doesn't it? Someone will sort of dip their toe in the motor racing waters, not really expecting necessarily to get hooked, but it does tend to prove addictive once you give it a go. And yeah, once you get the budget together and you have the opportunity to commit to a full season, then I thoroughly recommend you do so, because you'll learn so much more than just sporadic appearances in maybe one car or multiple different kinds of cars. Committing to a full season entry for something will improve you as a driver, honestly. That seems to be the case. And yeah, good to see that he is doing that in 2025. Been monitoring the gap at the front of the field. There's not a lot to monitor, really. It's not really doing anything. It is still 22.5 seconds. I think it might have been 23 seconds when Danny Soufi rejoined the circuit. So he and Lawrence Herr very evenly matched, as we get a look here at Danny Soufi, that is, isn't it? Blasting past the pit lane and heading on his way. Such a spectacular and instantly iconic bit of racetrack, that, isn't it? As they pop up over the brow out of the final corner. It's such a high-speed cresting of the hill as well. Really, within the first sort of event that ever ran here at the Portimao circuit, that very much became the iconic shot of the cars popping up over the crest into view. Very high speed, blasting past the pit lane. It is just one of those circuits that, from whatever angle you look at it, really, it looks exciting. It looks like a cool place to be.
It is. Elevation changes is kind of the secret sauce of a good racetrack sometimes. Of course, being from the UK, we have a few converted airfields that we need to stand up for in our community. But so often, it doesn't matter what colour you paint the runoff areas of your circuit. It doesn't matter what you do. You've got to have some of that kind of roller coaster feel to get some of those, as you said, instantly recognizable parts of the circuit. You know, you're never going to mistake the corkscrew for any other corner in the world at Laguna Seca. And I think there are a few sections of this Autódromo Internacional at Algarve that have that same character. The crest at the exit of turn 8 that we're just looking at on screen now, especially when it's two-wheel time here at Portimao, you're not going to mistake this circuit for any other.
Yes, as spectacular as an LMP3 car is around here, if you've ever seen a Superbike or a MotoGP rider coming around, not just that corner, a few different points of the circuit where the bike almost seems to completely leap off the ground, that is a real skill, isn't it? A fantastic venue. My first visit to Portimao this weekend, thoroughly enjoying myself. It really feels like you're at a proper venue that still has character. Lots of these new circuits maybe are a little bit copy and paste. You can't accuse the Portimao circuit of that, can you? So a great venue to come and spend a weekend. And in the case of the GEDLICH Racing organisation, they thought, well, if it's a good place to come and spend one weekend, why not spend two here?
2 weekends and several test days between them, of course, as well. The the GTs of the GT Win Series, the GT4 cars, and indeed a couple of pretty fast touring cars as well, taking to the grid for the Portimão 6 hour, the 6H Portimão, presented by GEDLICH, the first ever kind of proper endurance race, going long distance for the first time in the GEDLICH Racing Winter Series, and some great teams lined up for that race, and of course the season opener of the 2025 Formula Winter Series, as experienced drivers and rookies alike take to the grid there. So then Danny Soufi has crossed the line as the leader on this particular lap. The gap between he and Lindberg in fourth is 1 minute and 15 seconds. Whatever happened to Lindberg to lose him all of that time, whether it was the moment we saw in the replay or whether there are some other things we missed as well, regardless, it hasn't quite been the race Lindberg would have wanted. Equally for David Drew, I think there's probably some frustration for him at the helm of the 87 car as well, because ultimately, when you get these high-level pro drivers, those gaps of a dozen seconds, it becomes way too much of an ask. And David Drew, I think, having to settle here for third place unless something happens to Lawrence Herr, that's just going to be frustrating. I know I can match him, but I'm not close enough to surpass.
Danny Soufi there putting a lap on Vincent Guizy, the number 10 car now, so only 4 cars remaining on the lead lap. But yeah, you're absolutely right. We see this often in Pro-Am racing, don't we? There'll be massive fluctuations in gaps, lap times, positional changes within the AM stint. Stick the pros in the car, they will all pretty much be capable of running the same lap time, and they do it so consistently as well. So definitely what we're seeing, I think, between Lawrence Herr and David Drew and Danny Soufi, all of them lapping. Well, last lap times alone, a 1:39.27 for Soufi, 39.31 for Herr, and a 39.30 for David Drew. So they were within half a tenth of each other, the top three on the previous lap, and it's not a particularly short lap here at Portimao either. Speaking of lap times, though, interestingly, Adam, Philip Lindberg is now sort of back up to speed, isn't he? He's only running half a second off his previous best lap time. That's about what you would expect at this point of the race, really. So I'm even more mystified now, because whatever the issue was, it seems to have disappeared.
Well, I will say sometimes the kind of spec electronics on these LMP3s do have their moments. We've seen that already this season with cars trying to exit the pit lane. I've seen it before in other series on that front as well. I just wonder if maybe that trip through the dirt and the dust maybe put the electronics into a momentary frenzy. That could be one of many scenarios, of course. But nonetheless, Philip Lindberg continuing on and now setting a good pace. And of course for him, I suspect this move into LMP3 isn't just a Q1 2025 deal. I'm sure he wants to be a fixture in LMP3 racing going forward. And regardless of how the race has panned out, how he maybe lost the opportunity to fight for a podium, he's going to still have the visor down. He's still going to be hunting for improvement and hunting for data, as it were, looking for ways to improve his lap time versus those three at the front.
Yes, because we still have another race to come tomorrow. He may well have another opportunity if things work out in his favour in that second race, and if they can identify what the issue was for this race, hopefully give him a real fighting chance of taking the fight to Danny Soufi tomorrow. May well be a loose connection or something, actually, mightn't it? Yeah, that does make sense. Rattling over the grass, knocking a wire loose somewhere may have been the cause of the issue for Philip Lindberg. But anyway, he'll be hoping that doesn't recur again tomorrow. Danny Soufi, by the way, with a woefully slow lap time last time around, a 1 minute 40.7. He actually was slower than Lawrence Herr by quite a bit. In fact, all jokes aside, that was 1.2 seconds slower. He did lap Vincent Guizy, though, didn't he? So I wonder whether that maybe just held him up a little bit. We'll see what this lap time is for Soufi, whose car bounces its way through the final corner. That can't be the most comfortable of experiences in a high downforce prototype. Across the line he goes, back into the mid-39, so I think it probably was just the lap traffic that held him up on the previous lap. Normal service very much resumed now.
I'm so glad that for my autistic self you said all jokes aside, because I was trying to suss out whether that was sarcasm or not, calling a mid-40 a slow lap.
Oops.
Philip Lindbergh there having a lock-up into T10 and T11. Now we've seen that before, of course. Some issues with the front axle locking up at Estoril in the dry conditions. In fact, no, it was in race 2, wasn't it? It was in the wet conditions that he had that issue. I do remember him fighting the car in the wet and locking up at one point at Gancho. So I think in general that front axle has been a bit of a point of concern. Of course, I'm sure that in this class, as with others, they're potentially maybe switching the brake bias out depending on where you are on the circuit. Maybe not quite getting the hang of that bit just yet. I don't think I'd ever get the hang of that bit, so I can't blame him.
Well, look, I am not a professional racing driver. You may be shocked to hear this, Adam, but I have done a bit of sim racing, and having tried to make that very same transition from a touring car, TCR car specifically, over to a prototype, I found the most difficult part about that was getting into the corners, because you have so much more downforce. The car stops so much more quickly than you're expecting, and the brakes are so sensitive, so easy to lock up in a prototype compared to a sort of soft and very compliant touring car. So that often is the biggest challenge, and I've heard other drivers who have moved from touring cars into a higher downforce category saying that that's the thing that really bends your mind so much. It's just how late you can brake, how hard you can brake, but how narrow that window is between braking hard enough that the brakes are doing their job and then braking that little bit too hard, snatching a brake and causing yourself a world of problems. So, yeah, unsurprisingly, really, Philip Lindbergh, coming from a TCR racing background into LMP3, not really that shocked to see that it's the braking that he may be struggling with. He'll need to wrap his head around that, though, because it caused him issues in Estoril, as you said, and I suspect he may have another flat-spotted tyre now to deal with for the final 5 minutes or so of this race.
See, on a sim, I'm okay at that adaptation between different cars, but I can't imagine my brain allowing it in real life. I think of someone like Tom Christensen in the 1990s. Between his time as F1 testing, he was going and racing touring cars, prototypes, winning his first couple of Le Mans, of course, in the middle 90s, while he was in the PTCC, while he was testing F1 cars. I just can't imagine my brain allowing myself to remember, no, we're not in the Audi A4 anymore, or we're not in the Honda Accord anymore. You know, it's now time to lean into the downforce. I don't think it would work for me. No,
Yes, very much so. Even in the sim, that is what causes me issues, let alone if someone were to be crazy enough to give me the keys to one of these things in real life, which I don't see happening anytime soon. Especially now I've just... No, this is true, actually. And that's probably one of the reasons why they wouldn't let me have a go. But yes, it is a really remarkable achievement, I think, for any driver to have success in two completely different categories of racing. And you just don't see it that often these days, do you?
In fact, on that note, I feel like I should probably say well done to a friend of the paddock in the form of Rihanna O'Meara Hunt, who was racing in GT4 Wind Series last year. She's not back with us this year, I suspect principally because she's been preparing to go powerboat racing in the E1 electric powerboat series. Opportunities, they knock from weird angles sometimes, and well, she is on a totally different path this season, and indeed a totally different surface, I suppose, if you want to call water a surface. David Drew, some 13.5 seconds clear of Lawrence Her, or rather 13.5 seconds in arrears of Lawrence Her at this stage. That gap has pretty much stabilised, as seemingly, with maybe her slowly chipping away, the gap between first and second place. Here is Philip Lindbergh in the high-class racing number 20. A little bit wayward and sideways there out of turn 13. I say, strikingly handsome car, that as well. Looks very good. Maybe a little bit of Super GT to it, with the Motul backing, the red, white and black. Solid car.
Yeah, absolutely. And it looks as though it's now starting to behave itself again, although low 42 last time, that was a high 41. So no, actually, he's dropping a couple of seconds again now. And he's got a winking headlight as well. Now, that would also sort of add support, would it not, to our theory that maybe there are a few connections that aren't quite as secure as they were at the start of the race after that grassy excursion that he had about halfway through it. That headlight, unless it's a trick of the camera, is not functioning as it ought to. I don't think he's intentionally winking for the cameras. I think that is a bit of an electrical issue, maybe.
Friends are not electric, unfortunately, then, for Philip Lindberg. Vincent Gizzi there going a lap down on Lawrence Herr. Lawrence Herr in second position, still in the middle, 20 seconds back from the race leader in the DKR Engineering number 3 car, one of 2, as we said, Luxembourger teams at the paddock this weekend within the Prototype Winter Series, the other being Racing Experience, of course, in different chassis, Duquesne and Ligier. We've also been seeing at some of the GEDLICH race tests the ongoing development, as it were, of the third generation ADES LMP3 car. Of course, the third generation LMP3 is coming on tap this year in mainline ACO competition. The V8 engine of yore is being cast to the side. Don't ask for my thoughts on that. But the third gen ADES looking very impressive, is confirmed to be in the hands of Nielsen Racing at the moment, which is particularly interesting. Of course, Ginetta also starting to attract some teams back into their fold for the third generation LMP. So I think potentially this time in a year we have some very interesting chassis diversity in the Prototype Win Series, and in the summer I suspect fans of LMP3 should be treated to a bit more of a variety show as well. 35 seconds left on the clock, and that means that Danny Soufi is on the penultimate lap of this race. Even though he's out there at the front and on his own, he's still very much hot lapping down there in the 1:39s. Worth noting as well, David Drew just set his personal best of the race at 1:39.1 and is just a 10th off that this time past the timing and scoring. But of course we saw Danny Soufi at lunch immediately post qualifying. We had a little bit of a chat with him, and well, I mean, he apologised for the fact that he was sweating. You did just get out of a race car, Danny, it's okay. But we kind of got a first-hand visual there, as we often do, of course, with Izzy at the end of these races as well in the post-race interviews. These are physical race cars.
Yes, because I think to the uninitiated or the casual viewer, maybe, you sit there on your sofa at home and you watch Danny Soufi, let's be honest, breeze this race. It looks like he's going to win by give or take 20 seconds or so. He's not had to overtake anyone, really. A couple of lap cars maybe to deal with, but apart from that, he's just been driving around in circles, right? How difficult can that be? And yet you see the drivers get out of the cars. It is warm today. It's not blisteringly hot, but it's a warm day. He will get out of the car. He will be dripping with sweat. He'll be short on breath. You know, the adrenaline is still pumping through your body because it's so easy to forget how physically demanding and how mentally stimulating driving a high-performance race car is. Certainly around a circuit like this one, but really anywhere in the world. It is a difficult thing to do, and I think far too often, I've climbed up onto my soapbox now, I'm afraid, far too often we oversimplify this and we have such a negative view toward dominance in sport in general, don't we? And I think we forget sometimes just how impressed we should be, really, by someone who is capable of going out there and, you know, doing a Max Verstappen or a Lewis Hamilton, as it has been in years gone by, and making everyone else look slow. Because it's not like it's not like anyone out there is not trying. They're all giving it their all, and even when you're winning by a country mile like this, it ain't easy to do.
Just saying, that Conrad Ligier isn't a million miles off a peak Petronas Mercedes, is it, colour-wise?
Yes.
There could be some parallels emerging in, from your soapbox quote. Danny Soufi is on the final lap of his race, just going through turn 10 and turn 11 at the moment, and last few corners proving unhostile. He should be ready to take his third win of the season. Soufi, Philip Lindberg has had a moment at the very last few moments of the race, facing the wrong way, losing the rear of the car. Still not sure they've fully found the balance that Philip likes in that car on the front or the rear, but that is in part why you go racing in the unconventional months of the year, to figure this stuff out going into the summertime. For Danny Soufi, though, it appears he's got it all figured out. He crosses the line, and for the third time in 3 races, he has crossed the line victorious. Lawrence Herr taking second place, or will be taking second place, as Philip Lindbergh crosses the line a lap down. Here comes the DKR engineering car across the line in P2. Lawrence Herr finishing well there, and David Drew should end up in third place. There across the line is Vincent Gizzi in the number 10 car, and David Drew crosses the line in third place. Of course, only 5 left to run at the end of the race, so yes, everyone is now across the line, and Danny Soufi can cruise around the circuit, possibly even crack open that door to let some air in, and think about how he's going to have a different interview with Izzy Browning, given how many times the two of them have spoke so far this season. Of course, Danny will be greeted by Franz Conrad and the Conrad Motorsport team, who've been very busy this week, also in pre-event running a Lamborghini within the GT Wind Series sessions for a driver taking some early steps into GT3 competition, and we are expecting to potentially see that Conrad Lamborghini out in the Portimão 6 Hour. They've lodged an entry, and I've heard things, but yeah, we'll have to wait and see for sure whether that Lamborghini is on the grid next week. Nonetheless, the Ligier is not only on the grid, but it is dominating so far. Danny Soufi having an almighty season to this point. Yes, the year is young at this stage, but you have to be impressed with what Danny Soufi has accomplished thus far in 2025. Of course, looking to defend his championship here in the Prototype Wind Series. I believe we might well see him again in the Prototype Cup Germany in the summer as well, and he'll be looking to continue this rich vein of form, I'm sure, going into 2024. Now, in the 2024 season, Danny Soufi won 3 races. So far, he's already won 3 races all season long. 3 wins for Danny Soufi when he won the championship in 2024, and in 2025, in 3, he's already taken 3 wins. So an amazing season exemplified there. He's already matched the number of wins that he had in 2024. Shutting the door on the Ligier JSP 320, and we'll congratulate Lawrence Herr on his second place. I'm sure the Conrad Motorsport and DKR engineering teams with healthy respect between them. But Danny Soufi will be very happy, I'm sure, with how that race has unfolded. Quentin Joseph greeting his CLX Motorsport number 87 car. David Drew putting in a good stint to conclude the race there in this first outing of the weekend for the Prototype Wind Series, and I'm sure Quentin and David will be looking to move further up the podium spot. Izzy alluded to it, of course, on the pre-grid as well. They're looking for a first race win in the Prototype Wind Series. So are Brownson and Herr, of course. They didn't manage to find a way to win in 2024. They're back with us in 2025, and I'm sure DKR Engineering and their drivers are firmly scoping their sights on the top step of the podium, but it's going to take quite something, seemingly, to break this streak for Danny Soufi and Conrad Motorsport, looking close to unassailable so far this season, but there is a long way to go, and indeed in the second half of the season in Spain, we're expecting some additional entries that might give Danny some something to sweat for as well, and on Sunday. Tomorrow here at the Autódromo Internacional Algarve. It's a new day, anything can happen. And of course, we've seen before the effects that safety cars can have on these races, and we've seen that Lawrence Hur can match and indeed sometimes surpass Danny Soufi for pace. By no means does Soufi have Sunday's race locked up here in the Prototype Winter Series, but the data does suggest he will go into that race as a heavy favourite. Of course, today he has extended his championship lead, his title advantage looking strong as he goes to defend that title in 2025. We hopefully will hear from Izzy and Danny Soufi before too long, unless of course Izzy decides to interview someone else, given how many times she's talked to Danny recently. She decided to forego the Conrad Motorsport car on the pre-grid, but I'm sure we'll get to hear from Danny after his race win in this race. The drivers debriefing down there on pit road underneath the podium at the moment.
I have decided to get Danny Soufi. He won the race after all, so I got to come and speak to him. Danny, I mean, wow, first of all, you were untouchable out there. I think 6 seconds ahead by lap 2.
Really?
Pretty great drive from you today to start the weekend.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed that one. We had a really strong car all week, and I've just been feeling good. A bit under the weather, but still performing well, so I'm stoked on that. No, it's been good. It's been, you know, working with Mike this weekend and Franz. We've got the car like really dialed, and it's quick. So I think we showed that today.
And you just look so comfortable out there, like you were just saying, everything dialed and working with your team so well. So comfortable, so confident. The guys were saying in commentary, last Prototype Winter Series, you took 3 wins in the season. We're in the second weekend and you've just taken 3 wins already. So things are looking pretty good for the championship. Confidence, is that the buzzword that we should be using around you?
I think confidence, but more confidence in myself with all the preparation that I've done over the winter. I think I've done 1,000 laps on the sim just at Portimão. So I know exactly where to place the car, what to do, how to trail. Like, I feel confident on track with what needs to get done. So I just keep carrying that preparation forward. Hopefully towards Aragon and Barcelona we can have the same results.
And 1,000 laps on the sim, but you've done quite a few laps actually in the car this weekend. Quite a physical track. The guys were also saying that in commentary. How physical is it out there and how tough is it? Because you were still pumping in fastest laps towards the end of the race as well.
It is physical. It's not only like physically exhausting, but it's mentally exhausting. There's just so much going on, such little time to just catch a breather, only just down this front straight. So yeah, it's brutal, but I feel a lot better in the car now than I did last year. So all the training and the sim prep as well, just both mentally and physically feeling better.
And same again tomorrow?
Absolutely, hopefully so.
All right, perfect. We'll let you get up to the podium. Congratulations once again, and we will see the highlights of that race. Another dominating force by Danny Soufi.
Absolutely the case. Danny Soufi, certainly a trusted driver of Franz Conrad and the Conrad Motorsport team. As you can see, the GT Win Series grid awaits. But for now, let's look back at race 1 of the weekend for the Prototype Winter Series. It was Danny Soufi with a good start off the 2x2 formation rolling start. Philip Lindbergh held on to second place, even though Quentin Joseph was close behind. Joseph would lead a 3-car scrap. Brownson and Gizzy behind him, fighting it out for position. And Quentin Joseph was certainly feeling some pressure from the rather more experienced John Brownson. Brownson looking for a way into 3rd position. And sure enough, the number 3 would soon be P3 with this move into the first corner. But shortly thereafter, just a few moments thereafter, the 87 car came under attack again. This time from Christian Gizzy, and this time, unfortunately, they met in the middle at the apex of turn 3. The 87 spins back around. we are back in the right direction. Gizzy continued on. Meanwhile, at the front, Danny Sufi, some 6 seconds clear at the end of 2 laps of racing. The gap there illustrated on that camera shot from Jack Dixon, who is performing 2 different jobs, 2 different cameras in Jack's control this weekend. Our thanks to him for that. The battle continuing on between Racing Spirit of Le Mans, Gizzy, and John Brownson until a drive-through penalty was handed down to Racing Spirit of Le Mans. And the elder Gizzy Senior, had to serve a drive-through penalty just before the pit window. Also just before the pit window, the number 12 Racing Experience car having some issues out there on the circuit. Wolfgang Peyer seemingly struggling to find gears, not accelerating in the way it intended. And unfortunately, once it was in the pits, it did not come back out. The DKR Engineering car, however, would head back out onto the circuit, and of course it would do so with Lawrence Herr at the wheel. The diagnostics laptop was out down at the Racing Experience garage, and unfortunately, diagnosis was not optimistic enough to head back out onto the circuit. Philip Lindbergh was pressing on, perhaps a little bit too much in the pit window phase of the race, just prior to the pit stop. That car rolling about of it a little bit, and we can see there some splitter damage on the front of that car being taped up. And we didn't see this live. We did speculate that the car maybe had some damage, and I think it might have even been the in-lap before the pit stop that the car went off track, based on the fact it was still spitting out gravel as he left the pit lane. No such issues though for Danny Sufi, who was lapping very well indeed in the sunshine, controlling the race. As he said, he's done 1,000 laps of this circuit in virtual conditions, and he has been showing that that practice has paid off so far this weekend. He was being closed up by some of the faster gold drivers, the likes of Lawrence Herr, towards the end of the race, but I think an element of that might have been Sufi just not pushing the envelope to the nth degree as he controlled the race from the lead. Philip Lindbergh would have to settle for 4th position behind this man, Quentin Joseph, in 3rd place. DKR Engineering's Lawrence Herr managed to take 2nd position, of course, for his team, the number 3, he and John Brownson. But try as he might, press as he did, no one could catch Danny Sufi. In the number 1, Conrad Motorsport Ligier, he was in control at the front. Unfortunately, Philip Lindbergh out of control on the final lap, having a little bit of a spin, but gathering the car back up. Danny Sufi, though, took the checkered flag for the 3rd time in 3 races in the 2025 Prototype Winter Series. It is the number 1 Ligier that will be represented on the top step of the podium. Danny Sufi wins the race, and wins the race by 17 seconds over Lawrence Herr. David Drew in 3rd position ahead of Philip Lindbergh. Lindbergh in 4th place, Vincent Gizzy along with Christian taking 5th place, and Wolfgang Peyer registered there 6th in the standings, but of course will be a non-finisher after the car did not return to the circuit for Matthias Jakobsen. So then, the Prototype Winter Series race has concluded, and now we can head to Andy McEwen with the podium.
Thanks, Adam. Podium time then for the first time this weekend in the Prototype Winter Series. And we will welcome first our 3rd placed drivers for CAX Motorsport, Quentin Joseph and David Drew. Congratulations, guys. A 3rd appearance on the podium this season. In fact, the same is true for all of our top 3 teams in the Prototype Winter Series here at Portimao. 2nd position in our first race of the weekend goes to DKR Engineering's John Brownson and Lawrence Herr. Onto the 2nd step of the podium they will go, where there are 2 bottles of champagne provided by Quintas-Arcas waiting as a souvenir for their hard work this afternoon. But it is a very similar story on the top step of the podium as it was in both races at Estoril. The dominance continues for Danny Sufi. A third race victory from 3 races this season, and Danny, with a big smile on his face, heads on to the top step of the podium. He climbs up, the trophies are ready to go, and once again the GEDLICH Racing staff are here to give the handshakes and the trophies to, first of all, Contan Joseph and David Drew in third place, then John Brownson and Lawrence Herr in second. But the race win, once again, as was the case on both occasions last time out, goes to Danny Soufi, and Conrad Motorsport really are providing the perfect platform with which he is then demonstrating his absolute driving dominance out on track. A celebration once again then for our Prototype Winter Series podium finishes. Contan Joseph and David Drew in third, John Brownson and Lawrence Herr second, but the race win to Danny Soufi. And with that, we will hand over momentarily to the grid and Izzy Browning, where it is time to go GT Winter Series racing.
As you can see, most of the prototype GT Winter Series cars have already left the grid, but it looks like some last-minute tyre changing going on down at the BDR by Group Prom Racing Team entry. So Alfredo Hernandez getting a different set of boots on just before he struts from the pit lane. We'll see that car in amongst the midfield of this race. Once again, some of the GT3 cars are liable to getting into it with the Cup 1 cars for this race. And in fact, we once again have a Cup car at the front of the order, but not a Cup 1, a Cup 4. The Lamborghini Super Trofeo Evo 2 of Jerzy Spinkovic will be up there on the front of the grid alongside Moritz Viskirchen in the SR Motorsport by Schnitzelalm Mercedes. So I think again we're going to have some of the same dynamic that we had last time out here in the GT Win Series at Estoril. I'm looking forward to this one immensely, and let's go down to the grid with Izzy.
Yes, hello once again, back down on the grid for the final race of the day, the first GT Winter Series race of the day. We are still waiting for quite a few cars to roll in. I think a couple were late leaving the pit lane. I think, as Adam just said, a couple of cars perhaps changing tyres before they head to the grid. So I am going to make my way down. The pole sitter, Moritz Viskirchen, is just now rolling in. So I will hopefully get a chance to speak to him in a minute, but a couple of new entries coming into this weekend. One of those, the GT3 of Keanu Alazari, young 17-year-old driver who, for a 17-year-old, has driven a huge amount of different cars, but this is his first weekend in a GT3. He's driven in Spanish F4, he's driven in the Formula Winter Series, and Prototype Cup Germany as well, and of course now in a GT3 this weekend. I did just see him just before he jumped in the car, and he actually lost a lap time for not slowing under yellow flags in qualifying. So pretty annoyed about that, but I'm sure he'll be able to come through. Keanu, a very, very talented driver. As I said, the pole sitter, Moritz Viskirchen. Am I able to speak to the pole sitter? I don't think I can get the attention of anyone. No? Okay. We will carry on then, because I think the door is open on the number 25 of Jerzy Spinkovic, who is also just being spoken to, but I think I can jump in. Jerzy, great to see you back on the front row. Another front row start in the GT Winter Series. What are you expecting for this race?
I don't know, it will be for sure more difficult than Estoril, because the GT3s are faster here. But yeah, we'll see. With the other Lamborghinis also, and yeah, hope for the best.
And how comfortable do you feel around this track from the days of testing?
It's not bad, quite fun to drive. Yeah.
All right, wish you best of luck. Thank you very much for speaking to us. Thank you guys for letting us speak to Jerzy before the race. Right, we'll continue down the grid because we've got another new entry, this fabulous looking car. This is one of the GT2 cars. Now, I won't dare jump in to go and speak to their driver, but of course, fabulous to have them on the grid. We welcome them in Cup X. And then, of course, over here, we have also got the number 80. Sorry, Johnny, I'm going a little bit fast for you. you. The number 80 of Oscar Rinzovic. Now, he's actually switched cars coming into this weekend. So last weekend, he was in the Ferrari 488. This weekend, he's in the 296. Oscar, do you mind if I just jump in, grab a quick word before this race? How are you feeling ahead of this one?
Very different from last week, being at the not at the back. So bit of nerves, but should be good fun.
Yeah, you're the first of the Cup 1, so are you going to just try and stay out of trouble going into turn 1?
Yeah, just stay out of trouble, get into a rhythm, and see what happens over the half an hour.
All right, well, a great place to start. We wish you very best of luck in only your second race weekend. So thank you very, very much to Oscar for speaking to us. Always a bit nervous when you're the first one to start in your class, and of course so new to racing as well. So very grateful for him for speaking to us. I am going to jump in just quickly, if I can. I think I've got enough time just about with the 92 of Keanu. Keanu, I know not where you would have wanted to start due to the penalty, but an ability to come through, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's always unfortunate to get a grid penalty starting from pole. Yeah, I mean, let's see what we can do now from this position. I'm really confident in my pace, and it should be a very nice race.
All right, thank you for speaking to us. Best of luck. I'm sure we will see him come through and be up there fighting with Moritz Fiskirchen in this final race of the day.
The first GT Winter Series race of our first Portimao weekend of a double-header for the GEDLICH Racing organisation. And it is going to be a compelling race because we've rather hit shuffle when it comes to the grid for this one. Moritz Fiskirchen in the SR Motorsport GT3 Mercedes is on pole. It's Jerzy Spinkovic with that very fast Lamborghini. Alongside him, another car that could leap to the front in the early stages, Simon Wilner in the 889 KTM Crossbow. Simon Wilner, I should say. That car will be fast off the gates. Oscar Rinzovic, he seemed as surprised as anyone to be fourth on the grid. We'll see if he can maintain his position up there at the sharp end. An all GT3 row 3, Thomas Anderson alongside Keanu Alizari, and as you can see from Keanu's time, he should have been on pole if that lap time hadn't received a penalty for not respecting yellow flags. He will be working through the order. Severin Mazur is next. He's alongside John Dillon in the Cup 1 car. Very good to see John Dillon back in the series again this season. Kalle Bergman, the first of the Cup 2 cars, the Porsche 992 Cup machines, alongside Andreas Berg Sorensen, who of course took an overall win last time out. His car is a different car than it was last week. He's got a red machine as opposed to the white predominantly car he had last week. Cristiano Maciel, another overall winner from last time out, is alongside Tua Haugen in the number 23. Leandro Martins, the 911 car, in 13th place. He is alongside Alessio Ruffini in the 333 machine, another of those Cup 4 Lamborghinis. Przemysław Bienkowski alongside Alberto Duran, who makes his return to motorsport after something of a 14-year absence. Ryan James in the Cup 3 McLaren Artura Trophy is next. Good to welcome one of those cars onto the grid for the first time. He's alongside Alfredo Hernandez in the GT3 Mercedes. Antoine Beberich Martini is next alongside Darren Howell, two differing Ferrari Challenge cars on that row of the grid. Rafael Duran in his race debut, he joins his father in the AF Corsa lineup for this weekend. I remind you that I believe we are doing 2 formation laps, so no need to be worried that we're about to miss the start. Alexander Mijatovic is not going to be on the grid by the looks of it. I didn't see the car lining up on the pre-grid, unfortunately, but who we do have from row 12 of the grid, fortunately, is Dexter Muller. Dexter Muller had a big smash in qualifying earlier on today, had a bit of a trip to the physio. The car has been hastily repaired, and thankfully that car is out there on the circuit. Franz Conrad is listed there, but I don't think he was ever intended to be racing this weekend. Franz has been on about 15 entry lists that I've covered. Not once has he taken the start of one of these races. It's become something of a running joke between Mr. Conrad and I. I want to commentate on him at some point.
Yes, he is. He's keeping that from you, though, unfortunately, for the time being. Maybe he'll be tempted out a bit later on in the season. But yeah, an intriguing race ahead. The penalty for Keanu Al-Azari, which, as he was mentioning to him on the grid earlier on, he should have been on pole position by about 1.5 seconds, but as it is, we'll be starting from 6th position, and that means that he's got some work to do. It's all well and good being quick in qualifying, but does he have the ability to cut his way through the order? Well, we'll find out, I suppose, once things get going. But also interesting to see quite a lot of the Cup 1 cars not as competitive in qualifying as they were last week, and not as competitive as they were in free practice this morning. It really does seem that in the wet conditions, the Cup 1 Ferrari 296 Challenge cars seem to be the car to have. They were locking out the top positions in free practice earlier on this morning, then the track largely dried out for qualifying, and all of a sudden it's a real mix. In the top 4 positions, we've got 4 different classes represented. The GT3 Mercedes of Maurice Viskirchen, the Cup 4 Lamborghini of Jerzy Spinkovic, the Cup X KTM Crossbow of Simon Wilner, and then that first of the Cup 1 Ferraris, Oscar Rinzovic. Be fascinated to see how Oscar gets on, starting from the outside of row number 2. We know, Adam, don't we, that those Ferraris are rocket ships off the line. He may not have expected to have qualified so far at the order, but he's got a real chance, if he nails the start, of gaining even more ground.
Well, yes, but gentlemen, a short view back to the past. Don't worry, not like this. 2023 GT Win Series season finale at Barcelona. There's a KTM on the 3rd row of the grid in this specification that we have here, the GT2 spec. By the first corner, it's leading the race. Simon Wilner on the 2nd row of the grid could be one to watch in that KTM Crossbow GT2. We do have a GT2 class available for entrance in this series. That KTM is running Sans BOP ballast per team decision, hence it is in Cup X. So an interesting mix of cars at the front. 4 manufacturers in the top 4, in fact 5 in the top 5 with the matching Porsches on row 3 of the grid. Will it be Maurice Viskirchen that leads into the first corner? I suspect he's going to want to hug the inside going into turn 1 to avoid the KTM, but then he's got the Lamborghini to his left. So really, for Maurice Viskirchen, this is going to be a very difficult situation to manage. Will it be he? Will it be Jerzy Spinkovic? Will it be Simon Wilner in the MZR KTM? Or will it even be Oscar Rinzovic in that nuclear missile of a Ferrari 296? Let's see as we go racing in the GT Win Series. As you can see, the clock has been running on this 2nd formation lap, so it's about 26.5 minutes of action headed our way, and it's a good start from Maurice Viskirchen. We've talked up the bona fides, the straight line speeds of all the other cars, and yet it's the SR Motorsport Mercedes that leads through the first corner. The KTM did leap up to 2nd at the expense of Jerzy Spinkovic, so that is worth noting. Keanu Al-Azari looks like he's been swallowed up by some of the fast GT single mate cars. The Cup 1 Ferraris have slightly swallowed him. John Dillon and Andreas Berg Sorensen, I think that might have been, that were somewhere ahead of him. But Keanu Al-Azari trying to find some purchase around the circuit. Looks like we've got another one of the Ferraris off circuit there, as everyone tries to find track space in the early stages. But advantage GT3, advantage Viskirchen in the early going.
Well, what do we know, hey? That's not what we predicted, I don't think, is it? I have to say, Jerzy Spinkovic losing a place at the start certainly wasn't on my bingo card, because I don't think that might be the first time ever this season that that car has not gained ground into the first corner, dropping down there behind the rapid KTM of Simon Wilner. But crucial, really, that Vizkerchen got the good start, because in clean air, he should be quicker than some of the cars immediately behind him. The one he, I'm sure, was a little bit worried about would have been Keanu Alazari. Well, he's only 8th halfway round the opening lap. So Keanu, who was fastest in qualifying, started 6th after the penalty, dropping 2 positions at the start of the race. So a very topsy-turvy order, really, as they come through at the end of the opening lap. There is Keanu, is it? Yes, the 92 car. I think he might have gained a position or 2 since the last split. We'll see exactly where he is at the end of lap 1, maybe 6th-ish as they come over the line, with Vizkerchen the leader, Wilner 2nd, Spinkovic 3rd, then Anderson, Monsieur, Rinzovic, Alazari is 7th, ahead of John Dillon, Cristiano Maciel and Kalle Bergman. Not the order we necessarily expected at the end of lap 1.
So Keanu Alazari chasing on Oscar Rinzovic here. I expect he's going to get past in fairly short order. The inside beckons, but he can't quite get it done there. Now, Oscar has effectively gone back to ground zero again this weekend. His first ever weekend in racing at Estoril. Now he's in a different car again. He's gone from 488 Challenge Evo to 296 Challenge. Just his second weekend of racing. Here he is fighting Keanu Alazari, but eventually it seemed inevitable Alazari would get through. Can the superior straight line speed of the Ferrari be capitalised upon up the hill? I somewhat doubt it, unless a door is beckoned open. Indeed, Oscar Rinzovic has to settle there for what is 7th overall, and he is still leading Cup 1. However, just behind him, John Dillon and Cristiano Maciel. So just behind Alazari in the green SSR Performance Porsche, we now have a 3-way fight for Cup 1 honours.
Bit of a mistake there for Simon Wilner. That KTM crossbow very quick in a straight line, a little ungainly maybe through some of the low-speed corners. Missed the apex there through the right-hander. That means that Jerzy Spinkovic and Thomas Anderson, who's now the leading Porsche in this race, have closed right in behind him. So this is the battle for second position. And again, 3 different cars running across 3 different classes, but all trying to occupy the same bit of racetrack, really. The KTM should be strong, though, out of that final corner. Simon Wilner uses all of the runoff area on the exit, and Jerzy Spinkovic tries to use the slipstream. Looks as though maybe the Lamborghini is closing, though. Goes to the inside line over the line, and will have the position made, I think, by the time they hit the brakes into turn 1, or does he? Wilner tries to stand his ground on the outside, can't quite do it, bounces over the exit curb, and so Thomas Anderson almost sees an opportunity. In fact, it's Wilner on the attack. I think as he tried to defend from Anderson, he maybe missed his braking point and nearly rattled into the side of Jerzy Spinkovic. They avoided contact. Spinkovic hangs on to 2nd, but that was close.
Apologies to lead you astray a little bit. It should be Simon Wilner, of course, being a man of Austrian descent, as Anderson goes to the inside. I said it first, so definitely my problem. Critically here, Thomas Anderson knows that KTM like the back of his hand. He's been racing it in European GT2, not that specific chassis, of course, but in general, he's logged a lot of mileage in a KTM GT2. So as he sits there in the Porsche GT3, he'll be all too aware of where that car is strong and where it is maybe a little weaker than the GT3 chassis. And, well, let's see if he can use that to his advantage, or whether maybe it's going to be a point of frustration.
Yes, well, maybe. As you say, he knows the strengths and weaknesses of the car, but can he capitalise? Will his Porsche's strengths and weaknesses match those of the KTM? Lots of people being noted for exceeding track limits at turn 1, which appears to mean basically nothing, really. We've seen it, but you're not getting a penalty just yet. And in the early stages, I suppose, in a way, anything goes. Man on the move, though, is Keanu Alazari. He cleared Severin Mazieur on the previous lap. He has already latched now onto this battle for second place. So the sort of yellowy, lime-greeny Porsche at the back of this queue is the one I think likely to be on the move. The leader, Moritz Vizkerchen, though, is 6.3 seconds clear of this battle. So the quicker Keanu can get through this group, the longer he will have to try and chase down the race leader. Already, I think that progress through the traffic is about to begin. He closes on Thomas Anderson, lunges to the inside into turn 3, gets the car stopped. That was textbook.
That was, I think, probably Thomas Anderson now taking notes and saying, right, 5 metres later on the brakes at turn 3, definitely possible. Keanu Alazari on the move. He's going to have another look to the inside now as Simon Wilner and gets it done. Alazari very bright young talent, multiple-time race-winning Prototype Cup Germany, and of course was hugely competitive in last year's Spanish F4 and in the Formula Win Series, where he did a part-season campaign. We knew he was going to be quick this weekend in the 992 GT3R Porsche. Of course, the SSR team very much know their way around a Porsche, specialists in tuning and race modifying Porsche machinery. Also, the reigning DTM Drivers' Champion, of course, Mirko Bortolotti, entering an SSR Lamborghini to win that title in 2024.
Behind this group, by the way, the 3 Cup 1 leaders are getting themselves together. It was only 0.6 of a second between leader Oscar Rinzovic and second place man John Dillon, making his first appearance this season in GT Winter Series. And that has got very close all of a sudden, as was the case really in all 3 races at Estoril. The first 10 minutes, you don't know where to look really, do you? Some fantastic entertainment to be found up and down the order. We're hanging back, I think, to see what's going on with the Cup 1 cars. Here they are. The red machine is Rinzovic, the black machine is John Dillon, and this could be game on as they head towards turn 1.
Very impressive that Rinzovic is standing his ground here against someone like John Dillon, who's been racing Ferraris now for 15 years plus, I believe, and a very, very well-tenured driver. And yet Rinzovic, again, just 2 meetings into his career. I do wonder how much, oh yeah, I've barely done any track days, actually is, just because of how impressive he has been so far. John Dillon, though, really trying to fight his way around. Of course, John Dillon competed in Ferrari Challenge Europe last year. He knows his way around the 296. Cristiano Maciel, of course, another driver in just his second meeting, also taking the fight to John Dillon. And we've got a spectacular 3-way battle for 7th overall and the Cup 1 victory. We seem to be getting a Ferrari Challenge preview in every GT Winter Series race at the moment.
And I am here for it. And I tell you what, as if that wasn't exciting enough, look who's about to arrive on the scene as well, because we've got the 4th place Cup 1 entrance, Andreas Berg Sorensen, closing in, getting used to that new chassis, of course. Needs to clear the Porsche of Kalle Bergman, but then he, I reckon, will be on the case of the leading 3. There he was at the back of shot. Bit of a mistake there for the black Ferrari of John Dillon, running a little bit wide. Lots of people being noted for running wide beyond track limits, but as long as you don't gain a big advantage, I think generally speaking you'll be okay. This is a fascinating scrap though developing. John Dillon arguably quicker than Oscar Rinzovic, but because he's now having to watch his mirrors to see what Cristiano Maciel is doing, it's making his task of passing Rinzovic for the class lead all that harder.
And while that's been going on, Keanu Alazari is up into 2nd position overall. So now for Moritz Viskirchen, he will need to get the hammer down because lapping a second faster than him last time by, Keanu Alazari, the gap between them, 7 seconds. Now, once you're in the dirty area to GT3, that last few tenths can be difficult, but Alazari has been on a charge through the field so far, and with 17 minutes left on the clock, I reckon, at the very least, he's going to be right on that 3-pointed star on the bootlet of the Mercedes.
1.1 seconds quicker last lap than Moritz Fitzgerson, with an overtake involved there as well, getting past Jerzy Spinkovic, and he's gapped Jerzy by 2 seconds at the line. So phenomenal pace this from Keanu Alazari. You have to say he has just become the favourite to win this race overall, and of course this would also be for victory within the GT3 class. Now Moritz Fitzgerson won't be very happy about that because he definitely will be hoping that he can contend for the outright championship this year. Remember, in GT Winter Series you score points within your class, so winning the overall race is great. It's more important really though that he keeps Alazari behind for GT3 class points. We had a change here meanwhile, Adam, for 2nd place in Cup 1. Didn't see it on screen, but Maciel is ahead of John Dillon.
The momentum and the form of Cristiano Maciel continues then. He's up to 2nd position in Cup 1 and will be looking for a way past Oscar Rinzovic if he possibly can in the wet conditions race 2 of the GT Winter Series on Sunday morning. At one point, Maciel drove straight past Rinzovic to put a lap on him. Now, with Rinzovic in different car and a week separating the 2 incidents, now they're fighting for position. Very exciting stuff. Oscar Rinzovic then under pressure for this 7th overall and indeed for the Cup 1 win. But while we continue to watch this battle, because it's what's close on the circuit right now, that gap for the lead is still coming down in the background.
Cristiano Maciel has got about 5 laps to get this move done before we will have to turn our attention to the leaders, because it's almost exactly a a second a lap that Al-Azhari is taking out of Boris Fitzkirchen. We've also got this battle still going on for 4th position. Simon Wilner and Thomas Anderson together. So Anderson slipping down the order slightly as Al-Azhari has ascended, but I think he's about to move into 4th position again. Thomas Anderson had a much better run out of turn 4, gets the inside on the run down into turn 5, and I think we'll make the move stick. We haven't yet had the change, I don't think, between Rinzovic and Maciel. They're all over the place coming through turn 4, but it looks as though maybe it's about to happen down at turn 5.
Rinzovic has already been overtaken. Maciel is through in the similar livery car, but here comes Rinzovic saying, no thank you, I want that place back. John Dillon says, I will inherit anything you're willing to give me, but he remains 3rd place in this great Cup 1 battle at the moment out there on the circuit. Now we've got yellow flags at turn 13, and Alfredo Hernandez has not come across the timing and scoring line this time by, so power of deduction indeed places the number 77 car onto the grass, and hopefully we'll see that car rolling again shortly. Looks like he has managed to maneuver it away. I'm guessing maybe the rear end just got away from him there going through the fast turn 12 in such a way that he ended up back in that position on the circuit. Rinzovic still in the Cup 1 lead, just about. Is the car that he comes out directly ahead of. Update as well on Dexter Muller, who started from the back of the field. He's 13th overall now, slowly making his way through the field in the SPS Automotive Performance Carbon Raceworks Mercedes. Great job from that team to get the car ready again.
Andreas Berg Sorensen, by the way, a lap ago, I think, got ahead of Kalle Bergman, so he is now the next car in line behind the Cup 1 leaders and was quicker than them on the previous lap. I suspect that will be the case again on this lap. He does a 1:46.5, yes, over a second quicker than the 3 cars ahead. That was a close moment for Maciel trying to put a lap on Alfredo Hernandez in the Mercedes, who didn't exactly leap out of the way, but all of this is playing into the hands of the car just at the back of shot. Andreas Berg Sorensen warming to the challenge here, looks now the quickest Cup 1 car on the track.
And speaking of Cup class battles, just behind them, just coming through our shot, the Cup 2 lead battle. Leandro Martins is not too far removed from the rear of Kalle Bergman as well. Now Cristiano Maciel finds his way past the big Mercedes. We ride on board with Andreas Berg Sorensen. As you can see, he's got a nice view of the rear there from his camera, but all of the action's happening in front of him at the moment. John Dillon now with the Mercedes to try and navigate to stay in amongst it with the top 2, and Berg Sorensen, I'm sure, is sensing opportunity.
Remarkable how his pace has improved as we move through this middle part of the race. It really does feel that with every lap he does in this new chassis, which will inherently feel a little bit different to the one he was pedaling so rapidly at Estoril, he is gaining in confidence and gaining in speed. We've got a yellow flag between turns 7 and 8 at the moment, we're hearing. Getting a replay here of, another rotation, I'm afraid.
No, that's the first one.
Oh, is it?
One,
for Alfredo Hernandez, right, okay. So he has been off the track a couple of times for that part of the circuit, loops it back around. Oh, that's how he got there. Okay.
Yes, that wasn't the incident I inspected, to be completely honest. That wasn't the way to the inside of turn 13 that I was anticipating, but it was only one error. It was just slightly prolonged in that particular instance, and now he's back up to speed, clearly, because he's kind of in the pace with the Ferrari challenge cars. I don't know if he necessarily has spotted the blue flags, but absolutely in the midst of this Cup 1 battle, and now it's Andreas Berg Sorensen that needs to clear the Grupper Prom Mercedes. I do like the livery on that thing. It's a tasteful gold racing car, which is hard to come across at the best of times, but tasteful it is indeed. Berg Sorensen looks like he has found his way by, and the 76 car manages to safely, hopefully, navigate the GT3. He'll have the power advantage up the hill, and now he can try and gain those few car lengths back on John Dillon. Cristiano Maciel has definitely gained those car lengths back on Oscar Rinzovic as the Cup 1 lead battle continues. And at the front, the gap is still narrowing, Andy.
By around 9/10 to a second a lap, so pretty consistently coming down. Keanu Al-Azhari giving us every opportunity first to enjoy this Cup 1 battle. Ooh, screeching of tyres as both Oscar Rinzovic and Cristiano Maciel struggle to get the cars into the right-hander at the top of the hill. but they did manage to do so successfully. Right, 2.9 seconds the gap, and that time it came down by 1.4 seconds. So Keanu Al-Azhari is really getting on with this now. 10.5 minutes to go. Realistically, another couple of laps maybe before he's within striking range. So we're looking at probably the last 6 minutes or so of this race that he will have to try and find a way past the Mercedes. Catching, as someone famously once said, is one thing. Passing, very much another prospect. Yes, he's quicker than Vizkerchen, but you know that Moritz will not make this easy once the Porsche arrives in his wheel tracks.
Well, as I recall, last year in the first race here at Portimao, Finn Wiebelhaus was behind Jamo Hartling for the entirety of the 30-minute sprint race. And even though I think Wiebelhaus in clear air was somewhere around a second a lap faster than Jamo, once he was in that dirty air behind the other Mercedes, it just wasn't doable for Finn in what admittedly was his first race in a GT3 car. But there again, this is Keanu's first race in a GT3 car as well, so the deficit in terms of experience in this specific car is a factor. There's Darren Howell in the DMJ Drainage Ferrari, the Cup 5 entry, the sole Cup 5 entry on the grid for this weekend. I understand he's soon taking delivery of his Ferrari 296 ahead of the Ferrari Challenge UK season. I know he's entered in for a couple of more rounds for this year, but I think he said his plan was to stick with the 488 for the winter series. Vizkerchen Al-Azhari across the line, 1.5 seconds is the gap. I think one more lap and we're in for a fight.
I think you may well be right. And I have to say, very considerately, the Cup 1 drivers have put that battle on ice for a moment so that we can enjoy this overall lead battle. It's like they're taking direction from our director down in the truck down below. Right, you can have your moment in a few laps. Let's just deal with the GT3 battle first, because this is almost game on now. Keanu Al-Azhari is closing inexorably upon the race leader. Where will the move come? We've seen the Porsche has been very strong under braking, making some really good late lunges up the inside of other cars, but not necessarily against the Mercedes, which we know is usually pretty handy under braking as well. Having said that the Cup 1 drivers were saving the battling for later, Adam, I don't think that's quite the case.
No, I just saw out of my window that Cristiano Maciel has gotten past Oscar Rindzovic. So Rindzovic losing out to his fellow newcomer racer, both of them just as experienced as each other when it comes to driving in racing conditions, and the Portuguese driver Maciel on his home turf is through into the Cup 1 lead. While that is going on, we have another bulletin on the screen to say that the 151, the 23 and the 77, that's Hernandez, John Dillon and Thor Haugen, are all under investigation for incorrect starting positions. Start procedure under investigation, says Race Control. Moritz Vizkerchen under investigation too, but not anyone upstairs, purely by Keanu Al-Azhari.
I thought I'd missed a message on the timing screen then. No, he certainly has bigger things to worry about than that, doesn't he? He's got the Porsche bearing down on him, under a second between them. Interestingly, though, it was a purple first sector for Al-Azhari. Then he got within a second of Vizkerchen. And as you said, difficult then to gain that final second because you do have a bit of dirty air to contend with. The front end of the Porsche is quite light, remember, being rear engine, so that naturally robs it of a bit of front downforce anyway. Moritz Vizkerchen is flashing the lights at nobody in particular. Here comes the Porsche from a long way back. Keanu Al-Azhari, that was a bit of a wild stab in the dark, wasn't it, really? Just trying to distract Vizkerchen, maybe, but almost threw himself at the scenery.
Yeah, it's a slice and a dice towards his own brake pedal there. Now they've got some lap traffic to contend with in the near future. One of those being Ryan James in the McLaren Artura Trophy car, and then just ahead of him is the 296 Alberto Duran as well. So that's an interesting battle going on there. Vizkerchen, meanwhile, will be looking at that up ahead and going, oh, not the time, guys. Keanu Al-Azhari, as we've seen, pretty leery there behind in the Porsche, wanting to make a statement here, of course, for SSR Performance. He is signed to SSR Performance for various different capacities, and my goodness, that was scary there. One side of the car dipping onto the grass there, the left rear, that was a little bit alarming. But Keanu Al-Azhari with SSR Performance, he is signed to them on a fairly full-time basis, albeit not in a race seat. However, they run in various high-level GT championships, and should they need someone, Keanu will be on the phone.
I'm sure he will, and I think he's advertising his services pretty well here, isn't he? Because he's been comfortably the fastest driver on track against some pretty tough opposition. Almost had a trip up with the back marker there, as you documented, but he survived it. He's back on the attack again, but running out of time. 5 minutes 20 to go. This has been his favourite overtaking opportunity. Down at turn 5, he's had a good exit from 4. There's no defensive move from Viskirchen. There's another exploratory look to the inside. Not quite as wild an attempt that time as it was a lap ago, but equally he still wasn't quite able to find a way through. But he's asking all the right questions of Maurice Viskirchen, the race leader. But so far, Miss Viskirchen has all the answers.
Yes, John Dillon has visited the pit lane for, I think it was a drive-through for the investigation regarding the start procedure. I think he was penalised for that. Yes, drive-through for John Dillon. He's served it. Tor Haugen and the 77 car of Alfredo Hernandez. So John Dillon has served it. Berg Sorensen, therefore, is third in Cup 1 as a result of that. So a switch around within the Cup 1 battle at the fringes of the top 10. Meanwhile, Keanu Alazari still applying the pressure to the rear of the SR Motorsport by Schnitzel Alm Mercedes. Despite the similar colour liveries, these cars are not run under the same umbrella, and both of these drivers desperately want to win this race. Viskirchen, of course, very experienced in GT3 cars and very familiar to his team here at SR Motorsport, as well as raced many thousands of a kilometre in the SR Motorsport GT3 cars across various German series. You can see the bonnet there rippling up a little bit. That's purely, I suspect, mostly cosmetic. It might hold him back by a few tenths of a kilometre an hour down the straight with the drag. But Keanu Alazari, not as experienced in these cars, but we're seeing just how quick he is, regardless of whether he can make this last critical few tenths up to make a move for the lead. He's already held himself to account incredibly well.
We've had a few laps now of these two running nose to tail, so I'm starting to get a bit of a gauge of where the various strengths and weaknesses may be, and it does seem that the Mercedes has an edge through the final corner. I've noticed that Alazari uses a much wider entry going into the last turn, right up over the curb on the left-hand side, which is legal as long as two tyres are still on the painted curb. That should give him much more speed through the corner than the tighter line for Viskirchen, but it just doesn't. The gap doubles through the last turn. By the time they get to turn 1, though, they're back together again, so that tells me the Porsche has a bit of an edge in a straight line. So that's what Alazari needs to try and focus on, getting a slightly better run through the last corner, utilise the straight line speed along the pit straight, and maybe a move could be on into the first corner. It hasn't happened for him yet, though. Meanwhile, battle here for 5th position, Simon Villeneuve and Severin Monsieur. I haven't seen a lot of Monsieur in this race, really, whereas he was, get my teeth in, a real factor in that first race at Estoril a week ago. He is second, of course, of the Cup 4 runners, but battling here only really to try and break into the top 5 overall.
Yes, and of course the Lamborghini Super Trofeo car is eligible for GT2. You can get a GT2 kit for that car. So it is, shall we say, a pace peer of the GT2 spec KTM, and a good battle going on back there for 5th place overall. However, all eyes with 2 laps left to go on Keanu Alazari in the lead, in the 2nd place, fighting for the lead of this race. He is the lead Porsche, is the excuse I'm going to make for that brief slip of tongue. The big question is, can he get to overall 1st place and GT3 class 1st place? It's a good run out of the 1st sector. This is his favourite overtaking spot. He goes to the inside. I'm not sure he's going to get it stopped. He does get it stopped. Viskirchen was hoping to take the inside back on the exit of the corner, but Keanu Alazari placed that Porsche absolutely perfectly, and he's now into a race lead.
Yeah, I saw that coming. He had such a good run off turn 3 because Viskirchen outbraked himself slightly. That meant that he was then quicker through 4 as well, closer into the braking zone at 5 than he had been for a few laps, and we know how strong he is on the brakes down at the bottom of the hill. So that was a really well thought out move opportunistic from Keanu Al-Azhari, and he just needs to hang on now. We know in clean air his pace is around a second a lap faster than Vizkerchen. He really should be able to pull clear with about a lap and a half of this enthralling opening race of the weekend still to go, although we're now heading into the sequence of corners where maybe Vizkerchen's had a slight advantage up to this point. Of course, he hasn't had any dirty air to contend with until now, though, and I suspect that will stop him launching a real attack against the Porsche. Again, you see the difference in lines there as they turn into the last corner. Is there going to be a chance at a better run here for the Mercedes? No, the Porsche hanging on, and Keanu Al-Azhari is now 1 lap away from a fantastic victory on his GT3 racing debut.
This would be quite the achievement for Keanu Al-Azhari. I was going to use the phrase turn up for the books, but based on his performance throughout the week so far into Saturday, it's perhaps not a surprise to see him at the front, but the route there has been rather less travelled. The number 14 car off the circuit, so Thomas Anderson in the other Porsche 992 GT3R has had an off-track excursion. He was running 4th overall. I believe the KTM has gotten past him, as has Severin Mazur, so that puts him down to 6th overall. He's still ahead of Cristiano Maciel in the AF Corsa Ferrari. Drive-through penalty. Oh, as Severin Mazur goes for a move there. The 333 car has just got a drive-through penalty. That's the car in the middle of that. Alessio Ruffini a lap further down. But a moment there between Mazur and Villeneuve. I think Mazur saw half a door and kicked the rest of it open and moves up into 4th overall.
It's a difficult place to make a pass turn 1 for that very reason. It's hard to get the car stopped at the bottom of such a steep hill at the end of such a long straight. But anyway, Severin Mazur made the move. He is still only, of course, second in class, but has now gained an outright position. The checkered flag, though, waits, as does quite a lot of traffic, seemingly, for race leader Keanu Al-Azhari. What a drive this has been. A deserved race victory is now 2 corners away.
Yeah, he was meant to be on pole position. Of course, a penalty struck his fastest lap from the record, but even from further back on the grid from P6, he found his way to the front and got the move just a couple of laps from home. In his GT3 racing debut, Keanu Al-Azhari has taken the race victory here in the GT Winter Series. Al-Azhari wins by 1.8 seconds over Moritz Vizkerchen, and that is an exciting battle that we saw there. Wasn't sure that Keanu would find a way, with Vizkerchen seemingly stifling the momentum of the Porsche, but in the end he got it done. Meanwhile, back through has gone Simon Villeneuve, perhaps in the traffic. I'm not so sure, but what we are seeing here is 4th position potentially going to the KTM. Yes, it will. Spinkovic has already crossed the line to win Cup 4. The KTM takes 4th ahead of Severin Mazur, and Thomas Anderson crosses the line for 6th overall. Next up, it should be Cristiano Maciel, who got the better of Oscar Rinzovic in that exciting Cup 1 battle that we were watching earlier in the race. Indeed, here come the top 2 in Cup 1, and I must say again, I commend Rinzovic, because he was right on the back of Maciel all race long, and that is no mean feat for either party, because both of them are so new to racing, and yet they're outpacing some very experienced drivers. Berg Sorensen takes 9th, Dexter Muller gets an overall top 10 from the rear of the field. And the cars keep coming through. That was Caleb Bergman to take the win in Cup 2 as well for the Porsche 992 GT3 Cup cars. Leandro Martins should be across the line shortly. Martins, I think, might have had some dramas later on in the race, or perhaps wore the tyres out, because he dropped a lot of time to Bergman in the last half of the race. But everybody has now crossed the line, and Keanu Al-Azhari has started his GT3 racing career in the best way possible. We know he's doing GB3 with a B, not a T, with High-Tech in the GB3 Championship, but there is certainly a future for him in sports car racing as well as single-seaters. We saw that in Prototype Cup Germany last year with Molnar Motorsport, a seat he won in a shootout on a Winter Series testing event. Molnar Motorsport offering a Prototype Cup Germany seat to the fastest bidder. And, well, Keanu Al-Azhari proving to be the fastest of all out there on the circuit. And It's going to be quite the task, I think, to wrangle away many overall victories from the 92 car this weekend. Let's see if anyone can do it in the races to come, and I'm very much looking forward to hearing how he feels about that performance. Certainly, I don't think from the position he was on the grid, from the position he was at the end of lap 1, that it could have gone much better for him. The SSR performance driver is out of the car. The team welcomes him out of it. And everybody seems very happy with what has gone on there. Moritz Viskirchen should be fairly satisfied with P2 as well. That should, I believe, move SR Motorsport nicely in the championship, although Jerzy Spinkovic winning Cup 4 may also affect things in his favour. But Jerzy Spinkovic, of course, taking 3rd overall and the Cup 4 victory, and that is going to bolster the Unique Racing team as they continue to get their bearings in the winter time here. They ran last year in Lamborghini Super Trofeo, but I feel like we're seeing a step up so far this year from Jerzy Spinkovic. KTM crossbow of Simon Vilner, of course, taking 4th overall ahead of GT3 Poland's Severin Mazur. I think there's still some shuffling to be done on the timing screen, because some track limits penalties are being applied, although I don't believe they will affect anyone towards the front. Down in the pit lane, Keanu Alazari is celebrating his first race and his first win in GT3s, and he is with Izzy.
He is indeed with me, Keanu. Wow. That was quite the race for you. P6 where you started, but as I suspected, not where you would end the race. You were absolutely flying out there. A little bit more difficult for the lead eventually, but you found a way past, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, it was a really fun race for me. I knew I'd have the pace to go for the win. The start was a bit challenging for me because I'm not really used to doing rolling starts. And all the challenge cars drove around me because they have a lot more power. And I just had to clear through them. And yeah, it was a lot of fun for me. I had a few close calls, but they were definitely worth it for the win at the end. And yeah, the last move was a bit trickier than I would have thought. I guess I pushed really hard at the start, and then the tire pressures were just too high. But I was really satisfied with the race and the pace. So.
Yeah, of course, like you said, not used to the rolling start because your first GT3 race. You've announced yourself in a pretty special way. Of course, you've came into the Formula Winter Series last year and did much the same thing, winning straight away. So are we going to see more of the same tomorrow?
I hope so. It shouldn't be too hard, and I'm really looking forward to the next one.
All right, well, congratulations. We'll let you go up to the podium. Very well done. Your first GT3 race and a first GT3 win.
Well, there's a confident quote if ever I've heard one. Shouldn't be too hard to claim more victories on Sunday, is he? Let's see if that proves to be the case. For now, though, I believe we will take a look back at the race that was in the GT Winter Series. Certainly, Keanu Alazari had work to do. The race began then with the #1 car, Moritz Viskirchen, from pole position, getting a good start. Contrasting that, of course, Keanu Alazari actually lost places to some of the fast Cup 1 Ferraris as the race got underway. He would be trying to find some track space on the first lap. A lot of the entertainment in the early stages came from those Cup 1 cars, the Ferrari 296 Challenge machines. Oscar Rinzovic holding himself to account magnificently in this race. He would briefly hold up Keanu Alazari. He would continue to lead Cup 1 for much of the first half of the race. Meanwhile, Jerzy Spinkovic and Simon Vilner having a bit of side-by-side action further back in the field. This is just outside the podium positions where Thomas Anderson was also trying to come and play. And Anderson familiar with that KTM GT2 car, and I'm sure indeed familiar with Keanu Alazari, as Alazari went past both of them in fairly short order, just moments apart, those two overtakes. Alazari would disappear off to try and find a way past Jerzy Spinkovic, while Anderson would continue to scrap with the KTM. It was that move again from Alazari going into turn 5, the Toro VIP. And meanwhile, the Cup 1 battle continued on. Maciel got himself past John Dillon out there on the circuit. Alfredo Hernandez having a spin at turn 13, and then trying to gather it up. I think he thought that he could maybe get the car spun around, maybe the traction control kicked in there. I've seen that happen to Alex Zanardi many years ago in a GT3 BMW. Car didn't rotate for him. Unfortunately, he had a bit of a secondary moment. Alessio Ruffini also having a bit of a spin out there for Autosport Racing. He would continue on unabated. The 76 car of Andres Berg Sorensen finding his way past a recovering Hernandez, who was a lap down, but was keeping pace with the GT Cup 1 class machines. John Dillon had to serve a drive-through penalty for start procedure issues, and he would start scything his way back through the field to eventually finish 5th place within Cup 1. But this was the defining move of the race. Much like many of Keanu Alazari's overtakes, it came at turn 5, and it was very masterful in its execution. Severin Mazur and Simon Villeneuve getting too close for comfort very nearly at the first corner, and Mazur would get back through, only for Villeneuve to move back into 4th position overall before the conclusion of the final lap. While all of that was going on, Alazari had built a gap to the lead to 2nd place Moritz Viskirchen. He was in the lead, and he would take the checkered flag first. It would be a win for SSR Performance. Keanu Alazari, in his GT3 debut, taking the glory in the GT Winter Series. So the results in full: Keanu Alazari winning by just 1.8 seconds. But that doesn't really tell the story of the pace the young man had. Moritz Viskirchen claiming 2nd overall ahead of Jerzy Spinkovic, Cup 4 winner, in 3rd place. Simon Villeneuve in 4th for the MZR Motorsport Zentrum Reed outfit. Severin Mazur in 5th place. Thomas Anderson 3rd among the GT3s and 6th overall. Cristiano Maciel coming out on top in the Cup 1 category, just ahead of Oscar Rinzovic, who continues to show great pace in the early stages of his career. Maciel, of course, also in the early stages of his. Berg Sorensen in 9th place. Dexter Muller rounding out the overall top 10 in the Carbahn Mercedes. Kalle Bergman wins the Cup 2 category ahead of Rafael Duran. John Dillon in 13th place after his drive-through. Leandro Martins in 14th and 2nd among the Cup 2 drivers. Biankowski 15th. Biberich Martini in 16th place. Haugen in 17th. Duran in 18th place. Alessio Ruffini in 19th. Ryan James rounding out your top 20 in the Cup 3 class McLaren. Darren Howell in 21st place. And Alfredo Hernandez rounds out the finishing order. 22 cars took the start, and 22 reached the flag here at the Autódromo Internacional do Algarve in the GT Winter Series. And some of those drivers of those cars will be gathering around the podium very shortly to receive plaudits and silverware from Andy McEwen and the GEDLICH Racing crew. A very compelling start to the weekend in the GT Winter Series, most certainly. And we are excited to see how those battles develop again on Sunday. Keanu Alazari seems very confident that Sunday is going to be more winning for him, but I'm sure there are some rivals in the paddock that will be looking to dispel that rumour. Alazari winning the race across 17 laps. Of course, one of those was a second formation lap. And we'll see if that's the case again on Sunday, whether we're doing 2 formation laps in all categories. It's written into the Prototype Winter Series regs, not the GTs and the GT4s, however. Of course, after the podium, we are also going to wrap up the day of racing here at Portimão. And then we will be ready to do it all again on Sunday, where potentially the weather is going to have a role to play in proceedings as well. We'll keep an eye on the radar, and this is going to be very, very compelling stuff, I reckon. getting some interesting tips and some interesting feedback from some of the GEDLICH Racing insiders who are already placing bets on GT Winter Series champions. I might even tell you a little bit about those conversations that are going on behind closed doors in the race day wrap-up underneath the podium. But for now, we await the last of the drivers up there onto the podium. If you finish top 3 in your class, you're due a trophy, and we'd like you to pick it up. Certainly, the celebrations will be underway shortly. Great to see so many classes well populated in this GT Winter Series. Of course, the more competitors are in your class, the more points you score. So the GT3s, where there are 6 cars fighting for points this weekend, and Cup 1, where there are 7 Ferrari 296 Challenge cars, those are very strong categories to be in from the perspective of the overall championship. And of course, as we go towards Spain for round 3 onwards, we'll talk more and more about that championship battle. But I understand we are ready down on the podium, and for the last time today, I'll hand over to a podium-wielding Andy McEwen.
Thank you, Adam. Final podium presentation of the day then, after a fabulous first race of the weekend for the GT Winter Series. Lots of podiums to get through, starting with Cup 5. And we welcome our class winner within the Ferrari 488 Challenge category, Darren Howell. Darren fights his way through the crowd of drivers behind the podium. Darren, onto the top step you go. Congratulations on the victory in Cup 5. For the older spec Ferrari Challenge cars, the 488 Challenge, still a popular beast, and good to have Darren with his example here. Wait for the photos. There are lots of people wanting to take photos, I'm sure, of Darren. Back onto the top step a second, Darren. We've got lots of people who want your picture, and probably lots of people who want a picture of your car as well. The 488, always a popular iteration of the Ferrari Challenge car. Right, we're awaiting confirmation. We don't have all of our Cup 4 drivers yet, I don't think, so we do. We do. Excellent. So, Cup 4 for the Lamborghini Super Trofeo drivers. And we start with 3rd place in the category, Alessia Ruffini. In 2nd place in Cup 4, running with GT3 Poland, Severin Mazier. Where is Severin? Is he here? He's running through now, I think. We're waiting for a cap, and we'll try that again, shall we? In 2nd place, Severin Mazier. Congratulations, Severin, onto the 2nd step of the podium. But in the end, it was a pretty healthy lead and a pretty confident victory in Cup 4 for Jerzy Spinkovic. Not quite the starring role that he had in the races at Estoril last time out, but still a comfortable victor in Cup 4. Some more solid championship points scored for the PTT Racing driver, and another winner's trophy to add to the collection. So Alessio, Severin and Jerzy will be celebrating this evening. They'll be having a lot more work to do tomorrow, though, with 2 more races and potentially 2 more race wins for Jerzy to aim for. Can he be stopped on Sunday here at Portimão? There is a rendition of Happy Birthday being sung for, I think, maybe Jerzy. Well, let Adam Weller confirm that. He is the fountain of all knowledge within the GT Winter Series, but it's someone's birthday amongst the podium finishers. Happy birthday, whoever that was, and congratulations to our top 3 finishers. Right, we move on to Cup X, just the one runner, but a driver that we saw an awful lot of during that race. It's a class victory in Cup X for Simon Wilner. Congratulations, Simon, and thank you for providing lots of great entertainment in that race. An entertaining late race battle with Severin Mazier in particular was a highlight in that race. And Simon Wilner, bringing along the KTM Crossbow, claims a victory in Cup X. Again, photos to be taken. A big crowd down below joining in the celebrations for this final podium of day 1 here at Portimão. Right, we're nearly there, everyone. 3 more podiums to do. Next up is Cup 2 for the Porsche 992 GT3 Cup category. In 3rd position for Autosport Racing, Przemysław Biankowski. On to the third step of the podium, he will head in second position in Cup 2, Leandro Martins. Leandro hiding round the corner, heads on to the second step of the podium. But it was another class victory in Cup 2 for Kalle Bergman. Onto the top step heads the Wileko driver, Kalle Bergman, victorious in the Cup 2 category. Again, didn't see an awful lot of him in that race because he had a fairly quiet time of it, all considered, but championship points heading his way. And he and Leandro Martins have been pretty evenly matched so far this season, so hoping for maybe a closer battle between the two of them in races 2 and 3 tomorrow. Our Cup 2 podium finishers. Handshakes all round, and we move on now to Cup 1. And, well, this was one of the highlights of the race. At times, it was a four-way fight for the victory. Only 3 spaces on the podium, though, so we welcome, first of all, our third-place Cup 1 driver, Andreas Berg Sorensen. Great way to bounce back after the disappointment of race 3 at Estoril. It was third place this time here in Portimao. Second position, though. What a performance this was after a brilliant qualifying effort. It's second place on the podium for Oskar Rinzovic. Oskar led much of that race, only losing out in the final few minutes, and still will be very pleased, I'm sure, with second in class. But in the end, it was AF Corsa celebrating another Cup 1 victory, this time thanks to Cristiano Maciel. Cristiano onto the top step of the podium. We saw lots of him on the Estoril podium as well last time out. Cristiano continues to impress in Cup 1 after a real race-long battle there with Oskar Rinzovic, who defended well for most of it, finally relinquishing the lead with only a handful of minutes to go. But a well-earned trophy for him, for Andreas, and for our class winner, Cristiano Maciel. They gather together on the top step of the podium for photos. And once again, a big round of applause, everyone, for our Cup 1 podium. So we finally move on to our GT3 top 3 finishers. And again, lots of entertaining racing within the GT3 category in that race. Third position goes the way of Thomas Anderson. On to the third step of the podium will step Thomas, but really all of the action in GT3 took place at the front. A fascinating battle between our top 2 finishers. In the end, though, in second position at the end of the race was Moritz Viskirchen. A fighting drive, he defended as well as he could, but second place, the best that the SR Motorsport driver could achieve, because it was, in the end, a fabulous comeback drive, having qualified on pole, started on the third row, dropped to 8th on the first lap, but eventually fought back for the victory. A magnificent performance by Keanu Al-Azari. And Keanu still has the energy left to jog out onto the podium. He'll leap up onto the top step of it and celebrate a well-deserved victory in his first ever race in GT3 machinery. And he had to do it the hard way, dropping down the order at the start, forced his way through, and in the end made a really well-calculated move on Moritz Viskirchen to claim the overall and GT3 class victory. They gather together for photographs. And that is a race that will live long in the memory, perhaps for us, maybe not for the drivers. They'll already be turning their attention, though, to a full day of racing tomorrow. Lots more GT Winter Series action to come on Sunday, and we are very much looking forward to it. That, though, concludes our podium presentation. A big congratulations again to all of the drivers. Izzy, over to you for some final thoughts.
Thank you, Andy. Yes, welcome down to the pit lane for the final time today. I'm delighted to say I'm joined by Adam Weller, who's made his way out of the commentary box, and now we're basking in the sunshine of this evening. What a day. First day done here in Portimao. Overall thoughts, and then we'll get into it.
Okay, well, overall thoughts, I think the first thing I'm going to say is the young man who's walking behind us at the moment, Keanu Al-Azari, is striking a confident man in the GT Win Series as he laughs at me for it. He has to think about who he's going to be up against, though, on Sunday. He said, I reckon I've got more race wins. It'll be easy. Paolo Roberti is going to be in one of those GT3 cars tomorrow. He's been racing top-line GT cars longer than Keanu has been alive, and not even by a particularly small gap.
Yeah, true. You often forget how young these drivers are these days, as Andy was saying in commentary, and right on cue. Andy has now joined me in the podium. Andy, okay, we'll move on. We'll start with the GT4s then. Adam's already given us a little bit of a taste of what we had in the GTs. GT4s, once again, was an elite win, but a little bit more pressure on Mackenzie Cresswell at the start.
Yeah, definitely so. And of course, he won't be starting on pole position tomorrow either, so that could really mix things up. You've got to feel a bit sorry for the SR Motorsport squad, though, because that's 2 weekends in a row now where it really looked like Enrico Ferderer had something to take to Elite Motorsport, and it just didn't quite work out. This one a bit more self-inflicted with the contact and the penalty that came, but that Mercedes was the fastest car on the track today, and that really wasn't the case at Estoril. So I do predict tomorrow's races are going to be really interesting. The BMWs look fast. Got some of the pro drivers to jump in for that second race tomorrow too, but I still stand by my prediction before the race today. I don't think it's all going to go Elite's way.
Interesting, and you're absolutely right. Of course, the penalty for Enrico Ferderer didn't quite get to see all of what we might have expected from him today. Another penalty for the 812 of Rafa Racing by Racelab. Charlie Hart will be starting in that car tomorrow on pole position alongside the elite McLaren. So an all McLaren front row, as I said earlier in the day. What do you reckon going down to turn one?
Well, I was just going to say, I think Charlie, as the season goes on, as he gets more and more confident in that GT4 car, I think he's going to be great value for money. He's going to be our entertainment factor, I think, in a lot of lead battles. And I wouldn't mind betting that that starts in less than 24 hours. So I'm very compelled to see how that goes. However, I think what we don't have based on qualifying is a true indication of which cars are strong here. Those Mercedes are incredibly strong. We saw that last year. Front engine cars in general seem to suit Portimao. I wouldn't mind betting SR Motorsport get a measure of revenge at some point.
Yeah, definitely will be looking for a bit of redemption, perhaps. Someone whose weekend is so far going swimmingly, of course, moving on to the prototypes, Mr. Danny Sufi. Wow, I mean, I think it was 6 seconds by the end of lap 2. A fantastic drive from him and looks untouchable out there.
He does, really, doesn't he? It's ominous, again, for the rest of the field. Although, ever the optimist, I do not think he's going to have it quite as easy tomorrow. Limburg really should have been giving him more of a run for his money, had that off-track excursion. That may have led to some sort of issue within the car, we're not really sure. And there were other drivers in the second half of the race, Lawrence Herr in particular springs to mind, who were quicker than Danny. So we saw this a bit at Estoril, the second race when we switch over the order of the drivers. In that first half of the race, he may well have a bit more of a challenge on his hands, but he's such a cool customer. It just doesn't ever seem to faze him. He strikes me as a really smart driver. You know, he's capable of thinking through the whole race, planning ahead. He won't be too flustered, I don't think, if he comes under threat at the start tomorrow. He knows he'll have the pace in the second half of the race. He had some overtaking to do, remember, after the pit stops at Estoril, and made it look very, very easy. So he is the odds-on favourite, but hey, we're going to make it a bit tougher for him, I think, in race 2.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned there the potential issues in the car for Philip Lindbergh. We also saw the number 12 Racing Experience car having issues. I think when they came into the pit lane, when the laptop comes out, you know something has gone wrong, don't you?
Absolutely, yes. That's never a great indication. I think to our point regarding Estoril, to our point regarding Lawrence Herr, no two races in the Prototype Winter Series are the same. Race 1 at a circuit, race 2 at the circuit will always be drastically different because of the handicaps, because of the different lineups. So I think even if Sufi finds himself at the front tomorrow, he's going to have a very different pathway to victory.
Well, I'm excited. Okay, final race of the day, of course, GTs. Adam's already spoken, so I'm going to let Andy take it away with the GTs. Keanu Alizari, of course. A great battle in the end. I mean, obviously flying in the early stages of the race, but Maurice Fitzgerald didn't make it easy for him to get past. He did indeed get past in the end in his first GT3 race and a first win.
What a talent. What a talent. He is definitely one for the future. His first ever race in GT3, you never would have known it, the way that the confidence with which he was driving. You know, drivers will often jump into a car that's new to them and they'll find pace, but to find racecraft is quite a different matter because you've got to have full confidence in the car underneath you. He clearly had that. Really good under braking as well, which hasn't always been the Porsche's big strength really, but he seemed to find a way to make that work. again, made life interesting for himself by having a poor start. He'd already had that penalty, but yeah, really great drive from him. But some fantastic battles up and down the order. You know, we saw the Cup 1 battle going on further down the order. Fascinating racing there, some real standout performers as well. Yeah, GT Winter Series in 2025, I would argue, is more competitive than ever. We keep getting new drivers coming in and making it even more entertaining, and this young driver certainly is one of them.
Yeah, absolutely, and we'll be hoping for more tomorrow. I can hear that you've got an extra point, Mr. Adam Weller.
I do, and I did it purely because I promised it to the audience. I said there's been some kind of discussions within GEDLICH channels about who might be at the top of the overall championship at the end of it all. Cup 1 is an incredibly strong class this year, not just because of the driving talent, but because of the numbers in that category. More numbers in the class means more points scored. And we're talking about potentially someone like Maciel, someone even like Rinzovic, potentially vying for an overall title in their first ever championship, which is incredible.
Absolutely, and makes for an exciting season. Very excited to get racing underway again tomorrow morning. The racing does start early tomorrow morning. Can't get my words out, it's been a long day. So make sure you join us then. Thank you very much for your company today. It's goodbye for now.
Cayman are hustling for down racing. They both go deep into the corner.